Lin Dong was reborn on the eve of a terrifying apocalypse, endowed with an additional storage space. While a typical person would hoard vast quantities of supplies, food, water, Lin Dong chose instead to acquire copious amounts of raw meat and fresh blood. This was because he was about to transform into a zombie. Blood and flesh served as the source of a zombie's power. By consuming meat, he could perpetually evolve. A zombie nourished with ample blood and flesh would grow at an unfathomable and terrifying pace. The extent of his strength would depend on how much meat Lin Dong could consume. Thus he began by amassing billions of units of flesh. Chapter 1. Hoarding supply stakes. I only consume them at a perfect rare. As the first rays of morning sunlight bathe the cattle, it is time to feast. In the early morning at the ranch, several slaughterhouse workers were busy moving raw meat. Strangely, alongside the meat, there were numerous jars filled with vivid red blood. Under the bright morning sun, the glass containers glistened with a crimson hue, resembling fine red wine. Brother Lou, what is up with Boss Lin? Why has he slaughtered tens of thousands of livestock at the ranch? One of the workers inquired curiously. Another worker chimed in, indeed. What could he possibly need with so much blood plasma? Foreman Old Lou, though puzzled, refrained from losing face. It's best not to pry into such matters. Let us focus on our work. All right then, the workers resumed their tasks, donning masks and white gloves, ensuring that even their hair was neatly covered. Old Lou continued to admonish them. Everyone must maintain hygiene. Even a single strand of hair in the meat will cost us our wages with Boss Lin. Understood, Brother Lou. The workers responded in unison. However, they couldn't help but whisper among themselves. Have you heard? Boss Lin is a bit unusual. What do you mean? He seems perfectly fine to me. He has a cleanliness obsession and despises anything dirty. Oh, that makes sense. I wondered why. Shoo. Don't say too much. One worker interrupted with a light cough as a young man approached. Tall and impeccably dressed in a pristine white shirt, he appeared utterly unblemished. His fair complexion and chiseled features resembled a finely crafted sculpture, exuding an extraordinary handsomeness. As the young man walked under the morning sun, he should have radiated warmth. Yet his narrow, indifferent eyes betrayed an unsettling detachment. Foreman Old Lou hurried forward. Boss Lin, you're 500 cattle, 3,000 pigs, and over 10,000 chickens have all been slaughtered. Lin Dong nodded, surveying the neatly wrapped fresh meat and the jars of crimson plasma with satisfaction. You may proceed with the wages. Thank you. It's been a pleasure collaborating. Foreman Lou beamed, instinctively reaching out to shake his hand. However, Lin Dong remained stationary, fixated on the outstretched hand, motionless. Lou. The foreman suddenly recalled something, his face betraying a hint of embarrassment, for Lin Dong indeed possessed a slight aversion to physical contact, a tacit understanding among them. Boss Lin, we shall take our leave for now, and I hope to collaborate with you again in the future, he said with a forced smile, retracting his hand. He then led several workers out of the courtyard and boarded a small vehicle, which swiftly departed. Lin Dong watched them as they receded into the distance. Approaching the raw meat and canisters of blood, he waved his hand, and astonishingly, these items vanished. Of course, the blood and flesh had not truly disappeared. Rather, they were absorbed into his storage space. This space measured 1,000 meters in all dimensions, where time stood still, preserving items in their original state without alteration. The reason for this was that Lin Dong was a reborn individual, having returned to life half a month prior to the apocalypse, thus acquiring this extraordinary storage space. The harrowing scenes of the impending doom remained vivid in his memory. Zombies roamed freely, monstrous aberrations proliferated, and humanity faced severe shortages of resources. Fighting fiercely for a mere loaf of bread or a bottle of clean water, even betraying former friends and family, discarding the guise of kindness. While an ordinary person might think to hoard vast supplies of food and water upon their rebirth before the apocalypse, Lin Dong's inclination leaned towards raw meat and blood. For he was, in fact, a zombie. Blood and flesh were of utmost importance to a zombie. They represented more than mere sustenance. By consuming blood and flesh, a zombie could absorb energy, growing stronger and evolving into a formidable corpse king. A zombie nourished with ample blood and flesh would grow at an unfathomable rate. In essence, blood and flesh were the very essence of a zombie's evolution. Thus, Lin Dong's strength would be contingent upon the quantity of blood and flesh he could consume. At that moment, he received a call from a supermarket employee, Su Xiaoro. Boss, the order of 100,000 portions of frozen steak, 10,000 chicken wings, and 10 tons of prime cuts has arrived. Inform all suppliers to continue placing orders, Lin Dong instructed. What? Continue ordering? Su Xiaoro exclaimed in surprise. But boss, our circulating funds are insufficient. We can't even cover the deposit. I will handle the financial matters. You just keep placing the orders, Lin Dong replied. All right then. Su Xiaoro consented, though still perplexed. wondering why they would order so much stock without sufficient funds. Was the apocalypse truly upon them? Lin Dong owned a farm, a supermarket, and 2 properties, all acquired through his parents' inheritance. His parents had passed away when he was very young, leaving him with no memories of them. And he was sent to an orphanage where he grew up until he reached the legal age to inherit their estate. Gradually, he expanded and strengthened his holdings, striving for greater success. Despite his substantial assets, however, Lin Dong's liquid capital remained rather limited. In these times, the most valuable possessions are all within his storage space. With only 10 days remaining until the apocalypse, he needs to acquire some funds to continue stockpiling supplies. Lin Dong was deep in thought when he suddenly noticed a Mercedes G-Wagon approaching alongside a Wuling Hongguang. Within the Wuling, a group of young delinquents with brightly dyed hair sat, undoubtedly a sight that would cause distress to an ordinary person. However, a slight smile crept across Lin Dong's lips. It seemed fortune had arrived just when he needed it. As the Mercedes came to a gradual halt, a middle-aged man emerged, dressed in casual attire and adorned with a large gold chain, swaggering with every step. He was Zhao Peng, a well-known developer from Jiangbei City, who had long set his sights on Lin Dong's aquaculture land, believing that if developed, it would yield substantial profits in the future. Yet, Lin Dong remained obstinate, refusing to sell under any terms, which had thwarted their negotiations thus far. With persuasion failing, Zhao Peng decided to resort to intimidation, bringing along a few henchmen to apply pressure. "Boss Lin, I trust you are well." Zhao Peng entered the courtyard, flanked by his laid-back subordinates, who sported tattoos of various sea creatures, creating a palpable sense of intimidation. Nevertheless, Lin Dong maintained his composure. "Greetings, Mr. Zhao. You must be aware of my stance regarding the land. Have you given it any further consideration?" Zhao Peng spoke directly, his tone polite, intending to employ courteousness before resorting to threats. However, Lin Dong unexpectedly nodded. "Yes, I have made my decision. I am willing to sell it to you at the price you previously offered." "What?" Zhao Peng's face registered astonishment, clearly unprepared for Lin Dong's acquiescence. Even the young delinquents exchanged bewildered glances, questioning whether they had misread the situation. "You truly agree?" Lin Dong affirmed with a nod. "I wouldn't want my small plot of land to hinder Mr. Zhao from making a fortune." "Ha ha ha, splendid." Zhao Peng was elated, thinking that this young man had finally come to his senses. "Brother Lin, let us proceed to sign the contract." He retrieved a prepared document from his bag, one he had carried for days, finally ready to be utilized. Lin Dong accepted and took a seat in the courtyard, producing a pen and beginning to sign page after page. This aquaculture land was substantial, and according to market prices, it would sell for a staggering 120 million. Still taken aback by the sudden turn of events, Zhao Peng inquired, "Brother Lin, what prompted this change? Why are you suddenly willing to sell?" "Because I am in need of money," Lin Dong replied without lifting his gaze. "In need of money?" Zhao Peng's eyes flickered, finding this explanation quite reasonable. Besides his real estate ventures, he also dabbled in loan sharking. After all, his henchmen were not maintained for free. A sudden flash of inspiration struck Lin Dong, and he conceived a lucrative business opportunity. "Dear Lin, are you still in need of funds? Perhaps Brother Zhao could assist you," he proposed. "Oh." Lin Dong paused in his writing, slowly lifting his gaze to meet Zhao Peng's face. In that moment, he found the man's rugged features unexpectedly charming and endearing. The impending apocalypse loomed, compelling him not only to acquire a breeding farm, but also to borrow money for himself. Truly, he felt like he had encountered an angel among men. "Mr. Zhao, your assistance would be immensely appreciated. I am certain great fortune awaits us," Lin Dong expressed earnestly. "Ha, that would be splendid." Zhao Peng laughed heartily, sharing in the sentiment. "I can certainly help you. But let us agree on one thing. My interest rates are rather steep, and I require collateral. You are aware of my profession, after all." "Understood. I possess a supermarket and 2 properties as collateral." Lin Dong nodded in affirmation. Zhao Peng was already well informed about Lin Dong's assets. The 2 properties, situated in prime locations, were expansive and collectively valued at a minimum of 30 million. The supermarket, conveniently located near his residence, was worth at least 50 million. "Brother Lin, how does an 8 million loan sound with those assets as collateral?" Zhao Peng proposed. "Agreed," Lin Dong replied decisively. Zhao Peng felt a surge of delight. Believing this to be a foolproof venture, he truly considered himself a business prodigy. "Ha, Brother Lin, first, you must sign an IOU and provide me with the property titles," he instructed. "Certainly," Lin Dong consented. Thus, he sold his breeding farm and secured an 8 million loan, amassing a total of 200 million in funds. Zhao Peng, in high spirits, took the purchase contract and the IOU, driving away with his associates. Lin Dong wiped his hands with a white towel as he approached the entrance of the breeding farm, gazing in the direction of Zhao Peng's departure, pondering what thoughts might arise in the aftermath of the apocalypse. "Oh, Perhaps he would harbor no thoughts at all. With the sale of the breeding farm completed, Lin Dong resolved to gather his belongings, taking everything portable and then heading to the supermarket to stockpile the newly arrived supplies. The supermarket housed not only fresh meat, but also clothing, towels, soap, and detergents. Although Lin Dong had transformed into a zombie, he retained a semblance of human rationality, along with certain habits from his previous life, such as a penchant for cleanliness. Ding ding ding. Just as Lin Dong was about to set his plan into motion, his phone rang, signaling a new message. Upon checking, he discovered the sender's name, Sushan. Something dirty, Lin Dong muttered to himself. Sushan, the belle of Jiangbei University, was known for her pure and charming appearance, embodying a sweet disposition that drew many admirers, earning her the title of the heartthrob of thousands. Perhaps due to Lin Dong's profound loneliness, having lost his parents, he longed for companionship, which led to their romantic relationship. Darling, my birthday is next month. What gift do you plan to give me? Sushan inquired with a smile. The gift has been prepared, Lin Dong replied, his gaze remaining indifferent. However, Sushan seemed quite pleased. Thank you, dear. In truth, the gift itself is not of utmost importance. What truly matters is your attitude. You will know my attitude in due course, Lin Dong responded. In his previous life, after turning into a zombie, he received a distress message from Sushan, who was hiding in her dormitory, with no food left and on the brink of starvation. Thus, leveraging his identity as a zombie, which rendered him immune to bites, he dragged his numb body with stiff steps through a terrifying horde of the undead to deliver sustenance to Sushan. Upon arriving at the dormitory, he was disheartened to find her in the company of 3 boys. Once they discovered that Lin Dong had become a zombie, they mercilessly beat him to death. At that moment, Lin Dong desperately attempted to explain, but his ability to articulate had vanished. All that escaped his lips were helpless growls, akin to a defeated hound. Perhaps their decision to slay him was indifferent to whether he was a zombie or a human, considering that the apocalypse loomed just a month away. Lin Dong was determined to express his stance and bring them a small surprise. Furthermore, the living, in Lin Dong's eyes, could also serve as resources. After replying to Sushan, he began organizing his breeding ground. Generators, solar panels, and other equipment that would prove useful in the apocalypse, even an excavator, were all stored in his inventory. After all, there was ample space, and it was far from full. Naturally, he also kept some old items of sentimental value. For instance, on the wall of a room hung a photograph capturing a group of children, a remnant of his time in the orphanage, encompassing nearly all his childhood memories. Most of the children at the orphanage were abandoned by their parents, often bearing physical disabilities or cognitive impairments. The 2 most attractive children in the photograph were Lin Dong and a girl named Cheng Luoi. The little girl clutched a teddy bear, her fair skin reminiscent of a porcelain doll, with big, sparkling eyes that radiated innocence and purity. However, the director later revealed that she had her own issues. At the age of 12, she had bitten off half of a boy's face due to mental problems. Consequently, Cheng Luoi was sent to a psychiatric hospital, and Lin Dong never saw her again. Nevertheless, before that incident, they shared a close bond, often folding paper, drawing, and playing games together. Lin Dong never perceived her as mentally troubled. What he remembered most vividly was how she would squint her characteristic large eyes into crescent shapes and smile at him. He also stored that photograph in his inventory. After tidying everything up, he rode his white electric scooter to his supermarket. At that moment, numerous delivery trucks were parked outside, and a group of workers was busily unloading goods. "Boss, you're back. Here's the inventory bill. Please verify it," a young woman exclaimed, her hair drenched in sweat, as she hurried over, panting while clutching the ledger. She is the supermarket's inventory manager, Su Xiaoro. Recently, the supermarket has been receiving a continuous influx of goods, leaving her quite exhausted. "All right," Lin Dong nodded, observing the girl's weary appearance. "It's getting late. You should head home and rest." "Oh, thank you, boss. I have classes tomorrow morning, so I may not be able to come until the afternoon." Su Xiaoro is a university student, working part-time to earn her tuition. Lin Dong gazed at her and said, "You need not return anymore." Su Xiaoro's smile faltered, as she seemed to grasp his meaning. "Are you firing me, old boss? Did I do something wrong?" "It's not a dismissal. I am facing some issues. The supermarket will be temporarily closed." Oh, Su Xiaoro nodded obediently, though a hint of disappointment lingered. Lin Dong continued, "I will pay you double for this month's salary. You may go now." "Thank you, boss." Su Xiaoro expressed her gratitude, slowly lowering her head, a trace of melancholy evident in her eyes. Chapter 3. The killing. Lin Dong dismissed all employees and took down the supermarket sign. For the next few days, his task was to receive goods here. He contacted various suppliers, slaughterhouses, and livestock farm owners. Delivery trucks arrived one after another, predominantly carrying fresh meat, alongside some daily cleaning supplies. In a certain sense, these were more crucial to Lin Dong than food itself. "Mr. Lin, your delivery has arrived." Several young men in uniform from a courier service began to unload items from the trucks. Shortly, cardboard boxes piled up like small mountains, heavy with contents. For within were weapons Lin Dong had purchased online. Among them were 100 compound bows, 100 crossbows, and various knives and machetes, hundreds of items in total. In the lead-up to the apocalypse, the lethality of these weapons was extraordinarily significant. Although Lin Dong would eventually turn into a zombie, as a zombie endowed with intelligence, wielding some weaponry could be quite advantageous, wouldn't it? Time flew, and soon it was the eve of the apocalypse. Lin Dong's funds were nearly depleted. Although he possessed 200 million, having only paid deposits, his purchasing power far exceeded that amount. He was on the verge of monopolizing the market, leaving several major suppliers in short supply. By now, evening had fallen, the sun setting in the west, casting its last rays upon the empty supermarket. All the shelves stood bare, everything having been stored away by Lin Dong. Tomorrow morning, the end of the world would arrive. Lin Dong had prepared himself to forsake his humanity, yet he still held a mop, meticulously cleaning the supermarket until it shone, a habit he had developed. Gazing out the window, the streets remained bustling with activity, numerous commuters hurrying home, elementary school students lined up orderly to cross the road. Many parents waiting to pick up their children wore smiles on their faces. It seemed just like any ordinary evening, a simple, unremarkable twilight. Yet Lin Dong knew that by tomorrow, all of this would cease to exist. At this moment, he felt an unusual calmness, enjoying the last moments of tranquility. A sudden commotion erupted as the previously lowered roller shutter was violently lifted, producing a cacophony of sound. The fading rays of the setting sun illuminated three figures. "Boss Lin, I'm hungry. Could you get me something to eat?" The leading youth, sporting bleached hair and an air of insolence, was a local ruffian, a scoundrel who thrived on others' generosity. Business owners dreaded such individuals, as they frequently caused disturbances, negatively impacting sales. Most would swallow their pride and offer a few scraps to appease them. Lin Dong, without raising his gaze, replied, "The supermarket is closed. There's no food available." "What the hell?" The thugs stared in disbelief at the empty shelves. Just days prior, the store had been bustling with activity. "The supermarket has closed down. Does this mean we can no longer tease the beautiful warehouse keeper?" One of the followers lamented, visibly disappointed. "What should we do now, Brother Huang?" Another inquired. The leader pondered for a moment, scrutinizing Lin Dong. "Boss Lin, even if the supermarket is no longer in operation, you can't let your brothers go hungry. Lend us some money so we can grab a meal." Lin Dong relished the final moments of peace and refused to let these scoundrels disrupt his mood. Indifferently, he tossed a bundle of 100 yuan bills, amounting to over 1,000. To him, on the verge of becoming a zombie, money and waste paper were indistinguishable. "What the hell?" Huang's eyes widened in astonishment, not expecting Lin Dong to be so generous. He thought Lin Dong was intimidated, hence the large sum. "You're not bad. You know how to treat your friends well." The two followers felt elated, believing that associating with Huang gave them a certain stature. Any shop they entered would inevitably yield to them. Isn't this what it means to be out here? Huang is indeed a figure of respect. Indeed, sticking with the boss means 3 meals a day. Huang waved his hand, puffed up with pride. However, perhaps due to excessive smoking, he felt a tickle in his throat. "Has spit," he exclaimed, expectorating a thick phlegm onto the freshly cleaned floor Lin Dong had just tidied. "Wait a moment." Lin Dong suddenly raised his head, calling them to a halt as his gaze locked onto Huang, who detested filth. "Huh." The trio turned, puzzled. "What's the matter? Do you need something?" "The floor is dirty." Lin Dong approached him step by step. "Uffed." Huang couldn't contain his laughter. "I just spat a bit. What's the big deal?" The two followers shrugged, glancing at Lin Dong, unperturbed, thinking that since he had already given them money, what could he possibly do about a little spit? But at that moment, with a swift motion, Lin Dong revealed a glint of cold steel. A sharp dagger sliced through the air, striking true. The blade plunged into Huang's neck, delivering a fatal blow. The youth with yellow hair widened his eyes in terror, his expression instantly transforming into one of disbelief. He parted his lips, seemingly attempting to utter something, yet only blood gushed forth from his mouth. With a thud, the lifeless body of the yellow-haired young man collapsed. Never comprehending why Lin Dong had suddenly turned against him, the two henchmen nearby were equally stunned by the abrupt turn of events. How could their once proud brother be slain so easily? As mere thugs, they had never encountered such a scene. Their lips quivered, eyes filled with dread, as they turned to Lin Dong, who wore an expression of utter indifference. Was he a cold-blooded killer? For Lin Dong, who had experienced the horrors of a zombie apocalypse, this scene was trivial, hardly worth a second thought. The two henchmen clung to the shelves, their legs trembling. "Big brother, please don't kill me. I realize my mistake." One pleaded, desperation lacing his voice. "Yes, please forgive me. I promise I won't say a word." A slight smirk played on Lin Dong's lips as he suddenly revealed a smile. You may go. I shall spare you. Thank you. The two felt a measure of relief and hastily turned to flee. However, behind them, Lin Dong raised a crossbow, aiming at one of them before pulling the trigger. Whoosh! A sharp arrow effortlessly pierced the back of his skull, sending him crashing to the ground. The remaining thug, witnessing his companion fall with an arrow embedded in his head, was engulfed in terror. He quickly turned to find Lin Dong knocking another arrow, drawing it taut, and aiming it directly at him. The thug was paralyzed with fear. Hadn't Lin Dong promised not to kill him? This man was utterly devoid of honor. Big brother, thud. Before he could finish his plea, an arrow pierced through his forehead, silencing him for good as his body crumpled to the floor. Thus, the once bustling supermarket returned to an eerie silence. The power of the crossbow was quite formidable, Lin Dong mused as he surveyed the lifeless bodies, analyzing the situation. With a casual wave of his hand, he stored the 3 corpses in his spatial storage. To him, they were merely resources. Not only the living needed to be preserved, but the dead as well. Chapter 4. Elegance. Lin Dong returned to his residence, a high-rise building with a penthouse on the 20th floor. His home was immaculate, devoid of dust, with items arranged in an orderly fashion. The minimalist style offered a pleasing aesthetic. The windows were fitted with sturdy white steel railings to guard against the mutated beasts that might attack during the apocalypse. Solar panels were also installed. Although Lin Dong could become a zombie, electricity remained vital. Retaining his human intellect, he could easily succumb to boredom. Thus, he could watch television, play video games, or use his phone to pass the time. Moreover, these channels could serve as sources of valuable intelligence. Everything was now in readiness. The countdown to the apocalypse has commenced. After an interminable night, the dawn slowly rises. Lin Dong recalls that the end of days is set to begin at 9 o'clock in the morning. Glancing at the clock on the wall, he notes it is 8:59. Just 1 more minute to go. Lin Dong approaches the window, peering out at the bustling street below, alive with the sounds of traffic and the laughter of passers-by. The clock ticks steadily behind him, the second hand inching closer to the minute hand, heralding the dawn of a new era. As the clock strikes 9, the once bright sky is suddenly shrouded in a crimson hue, transforming into a blood-red orb. The pedestrians on the street gaze upward, their expressions filled with astonishment. Why has the sun turned red? I have no idea. Could it be an astronomical phenomenon? Quick, let us take a picture and share it. As people chatter, several begin to collapse, their vision darkening as they fall to the ground. The speeding cars start to collide in a cacophony of sound. Bang! Crash! The windows shatter, glass fragments scattering chaotically across the street. Realizing something is amiss, the crowd grows increasingly frantic. Honey, what's wrong? Wake up! A woman shakes a man beside her, desperation in her voice. But as he opens his eyes, his visage transforms into a grotesque mask, and he sinks his teeth into her pale neck. Ah! She screams in agony, her clothes rapidly stained crimson, her eyes rolling back as her body convulses violently. Such scenes unfold throughout the street. Monsters! Zombies! Help! In that moment, the air fills with shrieks, wails, and roars, a symphony of chaos enveloping the scene. Lin Dong, standing by the window, soon feels darkness closing in, and he collapses. When he awakens once more, he has become a zombie. He opens his mouth, a raspy sound escaping his throat, his ability to articulate lost. Indeed, it is as he feared. Many bodily functions have diminished, including the once potent vitality that now lies dormant. Perhaps he must gradually evolve to regain his former abilities. He turns to the mirror in the living room. His appearance remains unchanged, though his skin is pale and devoid of color, giving him a sickly aspect. As a zombie, his limbs are rigid and somewhat numb, his movements sluggish, and his sensitivity to pain significantly diminished. Lin Dong's current speed, it seems, is inferior even to that of an ordinary person. By the standards of his previous life, he has been reduced to a lowly, D-class zombie. Yet, his senses have sharpened. His hearing and smell are heightened, his nails are as sharp as blades, and his teeth are remarkably strong, capable of easily tearing through flesh. He tentatively takes an apple, biting into it gently. Once sweet and crisp, it now tastes as if he is chewing wax. The food was utterly unpalatable, and Lin Dong felt no sense of satiety. Rather, his hunger intensified. He yearned for flesh and blood. Thus, he approached the dining table, his movements sluggish and his body rigid. Yet he managed to don a pristine white napkin around his neck. From the storage space, he extracted a piece of fresh beef, placing it upon a plate. With a knife and fork in hand, he proceeded to slice the raw meat into neatly cubed morsels, much like one would during a Western meal. He speared a piece with his fork and slowly brought it to his lips. He was an elegant zombie. Lin Dong's hardened teeth effortlessly tore through the meat, which, once reeking of iron, now presented itself as a delectable delight. The blood and juices of the raw beef transformed into an exquisite sweetness. Ah, how delightful, Lin Dong mused. Outside, the streets remained a cacophony of chaos, filled with continuous screams and wails. Yet, within the confines of his home, Lin Dong savored his meal with grace. As he consumed the flesh, energy coursed through him, augmenting his strength. Once transformed into a zombie, his appetite had significantly escalated. His stomach felt like an insatiable abyss. After devouring 10 plates of meat, he finally felt a modicum of relief from his hunger, yet he continued to feast. A zombie well-nourished with blood and flesh demonstrated a terrifying rate of growth. Following his consumption, Lin Dong noticed his limbs growing increasingly agile, and his strength augmented. Even the steel knife and fork in his hands seemed less formidable, bending easily with a mere pinch of his fingers. Yet, he persisted in his indulgence, plate after plate, relentlessly absorbing energy. As time slipped by, the tumult outside gradually subsided, the cries of despair fading into the background, replaced by the roars of zombies. The city had succumbed to the undead, overtaken by hordes, with only a handful of survivors clinging to life. Lin Dong, however, remained oblivious to the turmoil outside, wholly absorbed in his savory feast. During the early days of the apocalypse, when the internet and communication systems had yet to collapse entirely, the news anchor on television, eyes red-rimmed and unable to suppress tears, continued to report with unwavering dedication. Urgent bulletin. Today, a sudden outbreak of a zombie virus has plunged humanity into a grave crisis. Survivors must ensure their own safety. Those who can endure are urged to seek refuge at designated shelters in the city. The broadcast warned, not only zombies. Animals and plants are also mutating to varying degrees. Even household pets must be approached with caution. Please, avoid city centers. We implore everyone to survive. Various tragedies unfolded mercilessly across the land. Yet, Lin Dong, with ears deaf to the outside world, continued indulging in his feast. He had lost track of how much he had consumed, estimating perhaps the equivalent of 2 cows. At last, Lin Dong felt satiated. He set down his knife and fork, deftly untying the still pristine napkin around his neck. After such a copious meal, his body was no longer numb. His agility surpassed that of an ordinary person. He surmised that he had leveled up, estimating himself to be a C-grade zombie. However, at this level, the zombies have a limited capacity for digesting flesh. Thus, consuming 2 cattle suffices to satiate their hunger. As their levels increase, their capacity for consumption will undoubtedly expand. Lin Dong rose from his seat and approached the window, gazing out at the chaotic scene before him. The landscape was a disarray of devastation. Shattered glass and blood littered the disorderly streets, with dismembered bodies scattered throughout. Countless zombies scurried about, hunting for prey, while groups of 3 or 5 knelt on the ground, fighting over the remains of human corpses. Their incessant howls echoed, reminiscent of ravenous guard dogs. There were also survivors, driven to desperation, who plummeted from high buildings, meeting a gruesome fate upon impact, their bodies rendered unrecognizable. Yet, many zombies surged forward, eager to partake in the feast. The sun, still a vivid crimson, cast its ghastly light upon the horrifying tableau, enhancing its desolation. But what did this have to do with Lin Dong? He leaned against the windowsill, feeling the gentle breeze, raised a goblet filled with a red liquid. Swirling it slightly before taking a delicate sip, he then picked up a pristine white towel to dab at his lips with an air of elegance, timeless, indeed. Chapter 5. Recruiting followers. Beep, beep, beep. At that moment, Lin Dong's phone chimed, indicating a new VX message. Upon checking, he saw it was from Sushan. Darling, are you alright? There are zombies everywhere. I'm so frightened and worried about you. Are you still alive? I am still alive, Lin Dong replied. Upon learning of his survival, Sushan quickly continued, I'm trapped in my dorm with little food left. You have plenty of supplies at the supermarket, right? Could you bring some to me? Alright, hold on for a bit. I will come by in a while, Lin Dong said, a sinister smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Since becoming a zombie, his smile had taken on a rather unnatural and eerie quality. After all, Sushan was a vital resource for his sustenance. However, it was still far too perilous outside. Although Lin Dong had consumed ample flesh, endowing him with strength far surpassing that of an ordinary individual, he preferred to bide his time and grow stronger before venturing out, ensuring absolute safety. Sushan, of course, was unaware that the being she was conversing with was, in fact, a zombie. Darling, you must come to rescue me. I am waiting for you. Love you, she sent. Lin Dong did not reply, for Sushan was currently engaged in activities within her dormitory that would be deemed inappropriate for publication, yet she professed her love for him. Moreover, at this moment, she was only sending messages via VX, likely finding it inconvenient to make a phone call. In addition, the group chat among the residents was inundated with messages, most of which were cries for help. Neighbors, there are zombies in our hallway, banging on my door. What should we do? Make sure to barricade the door. Don't let the zombies break in. I don't have much food left. I can't hold out much longer. Everyone, don't panic. The zombies are not strong. I just killed one with a shovel. Those brave enough to slay zombies. Raise your voices. We must unite and venture forth in search of supplies. Observing the group chats, Lin Dong fell into deep contemplation. Despite being a zombie himself, he harbored no intentions of attacking his neighbors, for human flesh is far from appetizing and contains less energy than beef. Consuming beef accelerates his evolution. Lin Dong had ample reserves, rendering the hunting of living beings unnecessary. However, should an unwitting individual provoke him, he would not hesitate to demonstrate the true meaning of cruelty. Moreover, while humanity may band together, so too can zombies. A formidable zombie king can command legions of undead, collaborating to hunt their prey. Hence, Lin Dong resolved to recruit a few zombie minions, not for the purpose of hunting, but rather to guard his territory and avoid disturbances. Taking up his keys, Lin Dong stepped outside his door. In the corridor, low growls echoed, indicating the presence of wandering zombies. He intended not to stray far, but to select a few minions within the building, possessing rather modest requirements. Cleanliness would suffice. Upon reaching the stairwell and descending a flight, he spotted a figure at the corner of the hallway. A girl, emitting a peculiar sound. As a fellow zombie, she posed no threat to Lin Dong. In fact, her eyes reflected a hint of trepidation. It appeared she sensed that Lin Dong's level surpassed her own, akin to a starving wolf encountering a fierce tiger. A natural bloodline suppression at play. Lin Dong recognized the girl as a neighbor from downstairs. In life, she had been a provincial high-jump athlete. Due to her rigorous training, her legs were long and powerful, and even as a zombie, she retained agility akin to that of an ordinary human. This was impressive, considering she had not yet feasted on flesh. It seemed zombies possessed certain innate qualities, preserving traits from their former lives. Lin Dong perceived potential in this female zombie. With proper cultivation, she could certainly evolve into an agile zombie king. Clad in a white t-shirt and shorts, her ponytail gave her a fresh and clean appearance. She was the one. With a flick of his wrist, Lin Dong tossed a bag of frozen steak, instantly drawn by the scent of meat. The female zombie knelt and bit through the packaging, devouring the morsels ravenously. After consuming the steak, she appeared unsatisfied. Her gaze turned towards Lin Dong, a mixture of fear and newfound respect gleaming in her eyes. Only by following me will you have meat to eat, Lin Dong conveyed through a form of mental communication, akin to brainwave transmission. This was how a zombie king controlled his minions. The female zombie seemed to grasp his intent, emitting a series of guttural sounds before gradually bowing her head. In the realm of zombies, this gesture signified submission. Thus, Lin Dong acquired his first minion. Together, they roamed the corridor, and before long, he encountered two more zombies of commendable quality. One of them had been a fitness instructor in life, a paragon of strength with a robust physique and well-defined muscles, embodying the very essence of a powerhouse zombie. The other, however, possessed no physical advantages. He had been an academic prodigy, a PhD scholar. Lin Dong was drawn to him, sensing a glimmer of intelligence in his gaze, a spark of wisdom illuminating his eyes. If one were to liken the intelligence of zombies to that of dogs, this scholarly zombie would undoubtedly belong to the elite border collie class. Apart from these two, Lin Dong found little merit in the other zombies he encountered. He brought all three zombies to his doorstep and assessed them. Their potential was commendable. Yet their current combat capabilities fell short against armed humans. If only you could wield weapons, Lin Dong pondered. But then, a thought struck him. Perhaps zombies could learn to use weapons, provided they receive proper training. With a swift gesture, he retrieved 3 watermelon knives from his storage space and tossed them onto the ground. The clattering of blades immediately captured the zombies' attention, though they remained perplexed. Staring blankly at the knives, Lin Dong quickly issued a command for them to pick up the knives. This time, the 3 zombies comprehended his intent and complied immediately, particularly the fitness instructor, who grasped the blade with a single hand. The edge of the knife cut into his palm, blood oozing forth. Given their diminished sensitivity to pain, the zombie felt no discomfort. Instead, it seemed pleased, casting a proud look at Lin Dong as if to demonstrate its obedience. Fool! Lin Dong slapped his forehead in exasperation. Are you meant to use the knife to attack people? The scholarly zombie, however, exhibited remarkable intelligence. Following Lin Dong's instructions, it adeptly grasped the knife handle and waved it in the air, quickly deducing its purpose. Lin Dong felt a surge of satisfaction and commanded the other 2 zombies to learn from this demonstration. With a clear example, they swiftly adapted, gripping their knives correctly. This indicated that zombies were indeed trainable, but only a more formidable corpse king possessed the qualifications to train them. Chapter 6. The The supermarket heist in the ensuing days. Lin Dong remained holed up in his home, indulging in copious amounts of meat, and in his spare time, he diligently trained his zombie subordinates. They progressed remarkably, mastering weapon usage and advancing from watermelon knives to crossbows. Over the course of 3 days, Lin Dong consumed vast quantities of flesh, rapidly digesting and assimilating an impressive amount of energy, conservatively estimated to be the equivalent of 10 bulls. His body was evolving at an astonishing pace, growing increasingly formidable. His skin had become as resilient as rubber. When a dagger was drawn across it, only a faint white mark remained. Conventional human weapons could no longer inflict harm upon him. My mind feels restless, as though something is about to awaken, Lin Dong mused, holding a goblet aloft and stretching his neck. This marks the harbinger of his ascension from C grade to B grade. Once he attains B grade, a crystal core will solidify within the skull of the zombies, significantly enhancing his overall prowess and awakening a unique ability. Each zombie possesses distinct capabilities. Some exhibit foundational traits such as rapid regeneration, super infection, and the growth of bone spurs, while others possess exceedingly bizarre talents, including hallucination, dream invasion, and mental manipulation. Zombies endowed with such uncanny abilities can eliminate their prey without a trace, causing distress among all living beings. Lin Dong remains uncertain about what ability he might awaken, for in his previous life, lacking sufficient flesh and blood to support his evolution, he never reached that level and perished prematurely before his journey truly began. Now, he raised a goblet to his lips, sipping delicately, his demeanor exuding elegance. Energy was being absorbed through the consumption of blood and flesh over the past few days. Lin Dong concluded that beef is the most delectable, followed by pork, with chicken trailing behind. However, in terms of blood, chicken blood reigns supreme, colloquially likened to an invigorating boost. After consuming chicken blood, Lin Dong felt his cells invigorated, absorbing energy at an accelerated pace. Even as a flush of color crept into his previously pallid complexion. Clang, clang, clang. While seated on the sofa enjoying his drink, the rhythmic sound of hammering echoed from the street outside, easily captured by his keen zombie senses. What could be happening? Lin Dong approached the window and leaned out to observe. He discovered a group of humans, heavily armed, their arms wrapped in newspaper and secured with tape to prevent zombie bites. They wielded various weapons such as wrenches and crowbars, and at the forefront stood a robust man, towering at 6 feet tall and weighing nearly 200 pounds, brandishing a fire axe while relentlessly striking a locked rolling shutter door. Smash, smash, smash. The fire axe swung with vigor, sparks flying with each impact. The location of that shutter door was none other than the supermarket Lin Dong had previously operated. It was evident that after days of exhausting their supplies, these individuals had no choice but to venture out in search of sustenance. If we can break this open, we'll feast without worry. The muscular leader glared fiercely, hammering away without pause, acutely aware that the cacophony would inevitably attract zombies. Hurry, Wong. The zombies are coming. A man urged in panic. On the blood-stained, corpse-laden street, several zombies had already been drawn to the noise, roaring as they charged toward them. Some zombies, having suffered from starvation without fresh flesh to sustain them, exhibited severe decay, their hair nearly stripped away, resembling an author who has spent sleepless nights crafting narratives. In their extreme hunger, the zombies appeared grotesque and terrifying, sending shivers down the spine. "Oh my God, how terrifying!" exclaimed one man, his legs trembling in fear. The burly leader gritted his teeth, forcing a few words from his throat. "Block them. The door is about to be breached." One shouted. "All right, let us fight the zombies." Another replied, wielding a crowbar and charging at the oncoming horde. The 4 men engaged in a fierce battle against the zombies, whose clumsy, rigid movements rendered them less agile than humans, allowing for frequent headshots. Blood sprayed, and lifeless bodies fell to the ground. However, the sheer number of zombies continued to surge from all directions, some even leaping from the rooftop, resembling dumplings falling into a pot. The men soon found themselves exhausted. Even ordinary people could only sustain such an effort for 2 minutes at most. "Ah, it hurts. I've been bitten. Help me," cried the previously timid man. Agony etched on his face as a zombie clamped down on his hand. Xiaofeng. The others yearned to assist, yet they too were drained. Moreover, being bitten by a zombie would inevitably lead to transformation into one of them. They could only watch helplessly as he was engulfed by 4 or 5 zombies, subsequently devoured. His anguished screams reverberated through the sky. On the upper floor, Lin Dong sipped a crimson liquid, observing the chaos with indifference, unaware of the futility of their efforts as they smashed the contents of the supermarket, which had long been stored in his spatial inventory. The man's screams soon faded, and the leading burly figure, Brother Wong, wore an expression of exhilaration. "The door is unlocked. Quickly come in." With a rattle, he pulled up the roll-up door. The others, hearing this sound akin to heavenly music, displayed expressions of joy and hurriedly turned back to rush inside. However, one individual, while running, was seized by the ankle of a half-destroyed zombie on the ground. Thud! He fell flat, panic surging within him as he desperately crawled towards the roll-up door. Brothers, hurry! Help me! The few who had entered grasped his arms, pulling with all their might. Yet, more zombies lunged at him from behind, no matter how hard they tried. They could not pull him in. The fallen man's body lodged perfectly at the roll-up door, preventing it from closing. A few zombies also squeezed through the gap, frantically trying to get inside. Brother Wong, what do we do? Two cried, urgency in their eyes. The burly man brandished a fire axe, smashing the skulls of several zombies. Gritting his teeth as he declared, we can't save him. We must throw him out. We have to close the door now. What? The two looked shocked, reluctant to abandon their comrade. Yet, with a shared understanding, they reluctantly released their grip. You have to save me. The man on the ground, filled with despair, was being dragged away by the zombies, his body slipping outward, but his instinct for survival compelled him to grip the edge of the roll-up door. At that moment, the leading burly man's eyes turned crimson as he swung the fire axe, striking the man's hands directly. With a sickening thud, the man's palm shattered, and he screamed in agony as his body was pulled away entirely, consumed by the cacophony of roars. Finally, the roll-up door clanged shut with a resounding thud, sealing off the horror within. Impressive, isn't it? Lin Dong mused silently as he observed from the windowsill, believing that their performance was commendable, having only suffered the loss of 2 individuals before charging into his supermarket. Particularly, the leading brawny man exhibited remarkable wisdom in his final actions. Alas, his store was devoid of any goods. Chapter 7. Weapons? Inside the supermarket, 3 men, their bodies smeared with blood, leaned against the rolling shutter door, their breaths heavy. Outside, the relentless roars of zombies and the grating sound of claws scraping against the iron door persisted. Yet, the trio felt a surge of excitement. They had finally breached the supermarket, envisioning the vast resources that awaited them. Wait. Suddenly, Wang Tsung's eyes widened as he quickly sensed something amiss. Before him, the shelves stood utterly bare. Nothing at all. Where were the supplies? The other 2 men wore expressions of bewilderment. Had someone already come and taken everything? Impossible. Even if someone had visited, it would be inconceivable for them to have cleared the place so thoroughly. Wang Tsung, wielding a fire axe, hastily ventured further inside to investigate, checking each aisle one by one. As they explored, their initial exhilaration plummeted to despair. The storeroom was completely empty. There wasn't even a single hair left behind. Damn it! One of them exploded in anger, swinging his crowbar wildly to vent his frustration, having fought so hard to arrive here only to suffer the loss of 2 comrades, only to find their efforts utterly in vain. Dongzi, calm down. Wang Tsung quickly intervened, knowing that the noise would only attract more zombies without serving any purpose. Dongzi, breathing heavily like a raging bull, retorted, Brother Wang, we are out of options. Not necessarily, Wang Tsung pondered, furrowing his brow. The supermarket has been stripped so clean. It cannot have been the survivors. This must have been a premeditated act by the supermarket owner. Are you suggesting the other 2 seemed to grasp his implication? Wang Tsung nodded. Yes, I've been here before. The supermarket owner resides in the building across the street. We should seek him out. Dongzi's eyes gleamed with renewed hope. They had fought their way to the supermarket and were unwilling to let their efforts go to waste. Moreover, the building was directly opposite, making it an achievable destination. The other young man, holding a frying pan, expressed his concerns, but on what grounds would he provide us with supplies? Whether he gives or not is not up to him. Dongzi, gripping his crowbar, glared fiercely. They had been driven to a dead end and were capable of anything now. Wang Tsung wholeheartedly agreed. Since he has hoarded supplies, we shall take them by force. All right. The frying pan-wielding youth steadied his resolve. Having witnessed the prowess of Wang Tsung and Dongzi throughout their journey, he was confident that the duo could easily overpower a supermarket owner. Alternatively, they could also consider a more optimistic perspective. Perhaps the supermarket proprietor has transformed into a zombie. If we can swiftly deal with him, we shall acquire a wealth of supplies. Approximately 10 minutes later, the horde of zombies surrounding the supermarket has dispersed, wandering aimlessly. The roll-up door is gently pried open just enough to create a narrow gap. Fearing the attention of the undead, the 3 individuals move quietly, making not a single sound as they roll out through the opening. Dusty and disheveled, they cast cautious glances around before determining their direction and swiftly making their way toward a nearby building. Indeed, from his vantage point by the window, Lin Dong murmurs, having witnessed the entire scene unfold before him and having anticipated such an occurrence. However, this presents a splendid opportunity to assess the practical combat skills of his 3 subordinates. As the delivery has arrived, With the building plunged into darkness, the elevator is inoperative, compelling the trio to ascend the stairs on foot. 20 floors. Along the way, they encounter scattered zombies in the corridors. The trio, possessing formidable combat prowess, dispatch the zombies with ease, yet the exertion takes its toll, leaving them drenched in sweat by the time they reach the top floor. This must be the place. Dongzi, knock on the door. Wang Tsung commands. Eagerly, Dongzi steps forward and raises his hand to knock. Bang, bang, bang. Open up, open up. His voice reverberates through the hallway. Meanwhile, Lin Dong remains unperturbed, preoccupied with washing his hands. Upon finishing, he gently dries them with a towel, then dons a pristine scarf around his neck. It's time to eat. I know you're inside. If you don't open up, we may have to break the door down. Wang Tsung brandishes a fire axe, his gaze fierce. Old Zishu on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. The bloodied axe hangs poised to descend. At that moment, a sudden click resonates as the door swings open. The interior is bathed in light, revealing a tall, slender figure. The young man's skin is pale, his features sharp and strikingly handsome. Clad in a spotless white shirt and adorned with a scarf, he appears remarkably pristine. The trio's eyes widen in disbelief. Since the onset of the apocalypse, they have not encountered anyone so immaculate. Yet, in his gaze lies a chilling coldness, devoid of any emotion or humanity. You must be the supermarket owner, Wang Tsung accuses. Lin Dong, however, remains silent, offering no reply. The other two, sensing the tension, grow anxious. Stop playing dumb. I know you have plenty of supplies. Hand them over, and we shall let you off the hook. Yes, you're wearing a scarf, clearly preparing to eat. For heaven's sake, say something. At this moment, Lin Dong slowly parts his lips. A raspy, bubble-like growl escapes his throat. The three stare in stunned silence, utterly flabbergasted. What the hell? A zombie? In their minds, zombies are supposed to be grotesque, terrifying, and filthy. Yet this individual before them, so impeccably clean, is indeed a zombie. The inconceivable reality leaves them astonished. Becoming a zombie is one thing. Simply eliminating them is another. Wang Tsung gripped the fire axe tightly, recalling that dispatching a zombie was far less daunting than eliminating a human. The other two nodded, prepared to take action. Yet, from the corridor, a sound of footsteps echoed, the noise that Lin Dong had just made serving as a summons for 3 minions. What? More zombies? Wang Tsung instantly became alert. However, he was not overly fearful. After all, he had amassed considerable experience through his journey of carnage. Judging by the footsteps, the number of approaching zombies was limited. The 3 men were wrapped in newspapers and bound with tape. A few zombies posed no threat to them and could be easily dealt with. As expected, only 3 zombie figures appeared in the corridor. What took them by surprise, however, was that the 3 zombies were each brandishing weapons. Wang Tsung and his companions furrowed their brows, sensing something was amiss. Upon closer inspection, they were horrified. Crossbows? With a snap, the 3 zombies simultaneously raised their crossbows, aiming directly at Wang Tsung and his companions. What the hell? Wang Tsung exclaimed in shock, utterly dumbfounded. He never anticipated that zombies could wield weapons. The trio quickly realized that these zombies were different. They did not charge into bite, but instead exhibited a semblance of training. Damn it, zombies are aiming crossbows at us. Is there no justice left in the world? Chapter 8. The eerie cry. This scene once again shattered the trio's understanding. Brother Wang, what do we do now? Even Dongzi, who had been fierce moments ago, was at a loss. Wang Tsung furrowed his brow. There was no choice. They could only gamble on whether the zombies could shoot their crossbows. All right, then let us go all out. Dongzi replied affirmatively. At that moment, Lin Dong had already issued the shooting command. Whoosh. The Dr. Zombie's crossbow bolt was remarkably precise, piercing Dongzi's forehead and causing him to topple backward. This is unbelievable. Wang Tsung's eyes widened in horror. Clearly, he had lost his gamble. Whoosh. Whoosh. 2 more bolts shot forth. The athlete zombie was equally accurate, the arrow puncturing a man's throat, delivering a fatal blow. Only the fitness instructor zombie, brawny yet simple-minded, appeared somewhat clumsy, as it shot an arrow into Wang Tsung's chest, piercing his lung. Wang Tsung cried out in agony, collapsing to the ground from the force. Just as he attempted to struggle to his feet, the instructor zombie let out a fierce roar and lunged forward, overpowering him without resorting to biting. Like a wolf pack, these zombies did not consume their prey without the command of their king. Wang Tsung clenched his teeth, finally comprehending that these zombies were organized and disciplined, with their sovereign being Lin Dong. Did this imply that they possessed a certain level of intelligence, capable of understanding his speech? Wang Tsung, grappling with pain, pleaded. I beg you, spare my life. I have my own difficulties. Please, just let me go, and I will do anything. At that moment, Lin Dong approached, step by step. Halting before Wang Kong, he reached out, seizing the crossbow bolt embedded in Wang Tsung's chest, and with a sudden jerk, yanked it free. Blood gushed forth, and Wang Tsong let out a pained scream, his heart racing with fear. What sinister intentions did this peculiar zombie harbor? Meanwhile, Lin Dong waved his hand and retrieved a straw from his storage space. Wang Tsong, bewildered, felt a dawning realization of Lin Dong's next intentions. I wonder how much energy lies within this blood, Lin Dong mused, having never attempted such an experiment before. Thus, he inserted the straw into Wang Tsong's wound. However, Lin Dong soon furrowed his brow in distaste. Ugh, he spat out the crimson liquid. This man was too obese, he had high cholesterol. Witnessing this, Wang Tsong was utterly flabbergasted. Even a zombie found his blood repugnant? Could it be that this would lead to his salvation? Yet, his fleeting hope was shattered in an instant as Lin Dong's monstrous jaws lunged towards his neck. Lin Dong issued a command for slaughter, and his 3 underlings, ravenous and eager, wasted no time in indulging their appetites. Before long, the gruesome feast concluded. The trio, their lips stained with blood, still yearning for more, found their loyalty to Lin Dong had intensified, even bordering on reverence. To follow the boss means feasting on flesh. Suddenly, a cacophony of ringing interrupted the moment. Who uses such a tacky ringtone? Lin Dong glanced over and discovered the sound emanated from the pocket of Wang Tsong's discarded clothing. He picked it up and answered. To his surprise, a man's threatening voice crackled through the line. Wang Tsong, I advise you not to play games. Hurry back with the supplies. Your wife is in my hands. If you don't return with the goods. Understanding dawned on Lin Dong. Wang Tsong had ventured out for supplies under duress. No wonder he spoke of his troubles. Hello? Wang Tsong, speak up. Don't play dead. Let me hear your wife's voice. The voice continued its threats, accompanied by the sound of a woman crying out. Husband, save me, they aren't human. Wah. Yet, upon hearing this, Lin Dong abruptly hung up the phone. What a coincidence, he was no different. However, Lin Dong felt compelled to uncover the whereabouts of these individuals. After all, the living could also be considered resources. Thus, he began to sift through Wang Tsong's text messages and WeChat conversations, swiftly uncovering valuable clues. The headquarters of the delivery service is situated within a construction site. Wang Tsong, previously a minor foreman there, often exploited the labor of his workers, earning himself a reputation for being exceedingly ruthless. After perusing this information, Lin Dong casually discarded his phone from the window, merely committing the location to memory without any urgency to collect his delivery. He was still reluctant to venture outside. Despite his considerable strength and the presence of 3 capable subordinates, he preferred to remain in hiding for a few more days, uncertain of what dangers lurked beyond. Upon returning home, he slipped into his slippers and washed his hands again before settling at the dining table to replenish his energy. He turned on the television, indulging in a leisurely meal while watching. After 5 hours of dining, he finally felt satiated. As his physical prowess continued to enhance, his capacity to digest increased significantly. From initially consuming 2 cattle a day, Lin Dong now required the sustenance of 4. After his meal, he soaked in a hot bath and donned a white sleepwear. He then meticulously cleaned his discarded clothing. Once all tasks were completed, Lin Dong, feeling content, sank into the sofa, ready to enjoy some television. Outside, darkness had enveloped the streets, which remained chaotic, permeated by the stench of blood and decay. Countless zombies roamed, hunting for any desperate prey. Yet, this disordered apocalypse seemed to bear no relevance to Lin Dong, who relished the comfort of his cozy abode. However, at that moment, a haunting woman's sob echoed through the building. The sound was profoundly sorrowful, resonating through the pitch-black night, an unsettling wail of the apocalypse. Any ordinary person would have been terrified, losing their composure, but Lin Dong merely scoffed, feeling no fear, only a hint of disdain. This mournful sound originated from his subordinate, the athletic female zombie. Had she evolved to the point of experiencing emotions? Why was she crying? Lin Dong pondered this, considering it plausible that the female zombie had consumed fresh flesh today, resulting in her evolutionary progression and the emergence of basic emotions. It was not beyond reason that zombies could attain a level of intelligence akin to that of humans, although that likely required reaching an S-class status. Of course, the potential of a zombie also played a significant role. For instance, the astute Dr. Zombie might not need to be S-class to evolve to a remarkably high level of intelligence. It appeared that the female zombie was no slouch, having developed fundamental emotions. What could be the cause of her weeping? Intrigued and with time to spare, Lin Dong decided to investigate and descended the stairs. Chapter 9. Out for the hunt. The piercing cries reverberated through the empty corridors. The female zombie was located in the room directly below Lin Dong, as that had been her residence in life. At that moment, the door was ajar, allowing the mournful sounds to seep through the narrow opening. As Lin Dong pushed open the door, he discovered a female zombie kneeling in the living room, her back turned towards him, her shoulders trembling with silent sobs. However, her acute sense of hearing detected the faint creak of the door, disturbing her lament. With a swift motion, she twisted her neck a full 180 degrees. Her expression shifting to one of fierce rage as she let out a roar, seemingly poised to launch an attack. Yet, upon recognizing Lin Dong standing at the threshold, her growl abruptly ceased, her menacing visage transforming into one of servility, even tinged with a hint of vulnerability. Through her sobs, the female zombie conveyed a clear message. I am so hungry. I am so hungry. I am so hungry. Each cry encapsulated these 3 desperate words. Lin Dong mused silently, noting her insatiable hunger despite having consumed fresh meat earlier that day, while his 2 companions remained unperturbed. The female zombie seemed to decipher his thoughts, lowering her head in embarrassment, emitting a placating whimper. Not inclined to dwell on her behavior, Lin Dong casually tossed a corpse, one he had previously dispatched, into her vicinity. The moment fresh flesh appeared, the female zombie's excitement was palpable. Her eyes widened, and a peculiar, eerie laughter escaped her lips as she dashed towards the body, tearing into the flesh with fervor. It became evident that this zombie was capable not only of weeping but also of laughing, her sinister cackles far more terrifying than her cries. Lin Dong observed that the female zombie's speed was remarkable. Her robust, rounded thighs left a blur in her wake, a testament to her athletic prowess. As she voraciously feasted, the room filled with a metallic scent, the sounds of chewing and tearing echoing ominously. This bizarre scene of nurturing a zombie was utterly surreal. Any normal person witnessing it would undoubtedly be horrified. Enjoy your meal, Lin Dong remarked, turning away. Having just bathed, he wished to avoid the lingering odor, akin to how one might avoid the scent of hot pot or spicy skewers staining their clothing. Meanwhile, the doctor zombie and the fitness instructor zombie remained in the adjacent room, silent and inactive, and Lin Dong made no effort to feed them. It seemed that the crying zombie was the only one eager for sustenance. Returning to his own room, Lin Dong settled onto the couch, contemplating his situation. Simply waiting for resources to dwindle was not a viable plan. Though his storage contained a substantial amount of meat, it would eventually be depleted. At the dawn of this apocalypse, supplies were relatively easy to procure, but as time progressed, scarcity would inevitably ensue. Lin Dong resolved to venture out and replenish his stock. He picked up his phone and opened the messaging app, quickly locating Su Shan. The conversation thread revealed a flurry of messages from her, to which he had not responded, along with several missed calls. Darling, how are you? Why haven't you answered my calls? I'm so worried about you. Please, please, please reply to me. You must not be in any trouble. I really miss you. Bring some supplies when you come to see me. Messages like these, and several others, flooded in. It seemed that Su Shan was truly in a state of panic. At that moment, Lin Dong finally responded with a single message. I am still here. Shortly after, the typing indicator appeared. Su Shan replied, You're alive. That is wonderful. Why haven't you answered my calls? I am so worried about you. I have zombies all around me, and I fear that answering the phone might disturb them, so my phone is on silent. Lin Dong spoke the truth, for he was indeed surrounded by the undead. Su Shan continued, I really miss you. Whether alive or dead, I just want to see you. Can you come find me? All right, I will come to find you tomorrow, Lin Dong replied. Yes, yes, I will be waiting for you in the school dormitory. You must come. Try to bring as much food as you can. We need to survive. Lin Dong gave a slight smile, a cruel glimmer flashing in his eyes. It was time to gather supplies. Early the next morning, Lin Dong changed into a clean set of athletic wear and glanced at his reflection in the mirror. His handsome face devoid of any expression. He had transformed into a zombie, retaining human consciousness. Yet the changes to his body had affected him somewhat. His emotions had grown colder and more numb than those of an ordinary person, giving him an air of tranquility. Descending the stairs, he found a medium-sized delivery truck parked by the street, the very one he had used to haul goods from the supermarket. He climbed into the driver's seat and signaled to his 3 subordinates that it was time for a hunt. Suddenly, the building erupted with a chorus of growls. The female zombie was the fastest, darting like a gust of wind, emitting a strange, ghastly laughter, her countenance brimming with exhilaration. After descending several flights, perhaps feeling it was still too slow, she leaped through a shattered window, landing gracefully without a hint of injury before slipping into Lin Dong's truck. Next came the fitness instructor zombie, now even more muscular, his physique grotesquely exaggerated, his skin a pallid gray, veins bulging, and towering nearly 2 meters tall. With each step he took, the ground seemed to tremble beneath him. The unit door, half ajar, could not accommodate his bulk. So the instructor zombie smashed through the door and charged out, displaying an extreme level of aggression. Observing his reckless behavior, Lin Dong dubbed him Tank. Once Tank was on board, the doctor zombie emerged last. He moved at a leisurely pace, exuding an air of calm, and after entering the truck, He even took the initiative to close the cargo door. Lin Dong pressed the accelerator to the floor. The delivery truck roared to life, speeding down the street, plowing through zombies and abandoned vehicles alike, sending them flying or crushing them beneath its wheels. As the passing zombies were disturbed, they emitted a series of roars. However, being fellow undead, they refrained from launching an attack. Lin Dong hastened towards Jiangbei University. Due to the recent hunting excursion, the female zombie in the cargo area was quite exhilarated, occasionally letting out a sinister chuckle. Yet, the intellectually challenged tank zombie found himself perplexed. Wasn't the purpose of this outing to hunt? Why was he confined within this dark enclosure? Lin Dong drove aggressively, relentlessly plowing through obstacles, causing the vehicle to jolt violently. The tank's hefty form, coupled with inertia, often sent him tumbling about. Fortunately, it wasn't long before Lin Dong arrived at Jiangbei University, where numerous zombies roamed near the entrance. He drove straight over them, bringing the vehicle to a halt beneath the female dormitory. 3 zombie minions leaped from the cargo hold. Finally freed, the tank surveyed his surroundings with ferocious eyes, realizing that the scenery had dramatically changed from what it was before entering the dark box. Given his current intellect, he could hardly comprehend the situation. Could it be that entering this box allowed for a change of location? Once the tank pieced this together, he threw back his head and let out a thunderous roar. The sound reverberated across the area, shattering the glass of the nearby dormitory. The lower-tier zombies nearby trembled in fear and retreated. Lin Dong was startled and turned to see what was happening. "What are you roaring about?" "Roar, roar, roar. I don't even know what I'm roaring about," the tank bellowed, expressing his own confusion. Lin Dong sighed internally, feeling exasperated. The ferocious roar of the zombies startled a flock of birds into flight. The survivors within the female dormitory also heard the commotion, sending them into a panic. Su Shan was trembling in fear. Could it be that Lin Dong was devoured by zombies? It's possible. Just now, I heard the sound of a vehicle. It must be your boyfriend, disturbing the zombies. A sturdy young man remarked. Seems your boyfriend truly cares for you, risking such danger to come find you, another tall male added. Su Shan, along with these 3 young men, were all members of the school's basketball team, she being a cheerleader, thus forming a bond with them. Humph. Love? I see him as nothing more than a love-struck fool, ending up with nothing, scoffed the last young man, who took pleasure in the idea of others' admiration yielding to him, deriving a peculiar sense of accomplishment. Su Shan, unfazed, lamented, so what now? That Lin Dong is utterly useless. He can't even bring some food. Wait. One of the boys perked up, seizing a nearby steel pipe. There seems to be some noise in the corridor. Someone is approaching. Instantly, the group fell silent, straining to listen to the situation outside. Indeed, the sound of footsteps grew closer, accompanied by faint, low growls from zombies. "Oh, it seems your love-struck boyfriend has barged in," one boy quipped. With an expression of excitement, they realized that their supplies in the dormitory had been depleted over the past few days, leaving them ravenously hungry. Even before the enchanting Su Shan, their interest had waned. They were determined to adhere to their plan. The 3 boys, wielding steel pipes detached from stool legs, concealed themselves on either side of the door, intending to ambush Lin Dong upon his entrance and seize his provisions. From the outset, they had no intention of allowing Lin Dong to leave alive. Setting aside their grudges, the presence of an additional person merely meant an extra share of rations. In essence, Lin Dong's survival held no advantage for them. Knock, knock, knock. A rhythmic knocking resounded, neither hurried nor slow, imbued with an air of indifference. Peering through the peephole, Su Shan glimpsed a pale, yet handsome face. It was Lin Dong. "Come in quickly," she urged, hastily unlocking the door. Upon Lin Dong's entry, Su Shan, seemingly fearful of his departure, promptly secured the door behind him. At that moment, the 3 boys emerged brandishing their weapons, encircling him. "Where's the food? Where have you hidden it? Hand it over," one of the boys demanded. Their original plan was to incapacitate Lin Dong the instant he crossed the threshold. But upon seeing his empty hands, they felt compelled to inquire first. Lin Dong remained expressionless, utterly indifferent, his gaze surveying the room before finally resting on Su Shan. Meeting his eyes, Su Shan felt no remorse. "I admit I deceived you, but at this juncture, there is no need for explanations. It's every man for himself." Lin Dong continued to fixate on her in silence, while the 3 boys grew increasingly impatient. "Damn it, speak up. Where's the food? Hurry and hand it over, or we'll beat you to death. It's the end of days anyway. Killing you would be in vain." Their overwhelming hunger twisted their features into grimaces. At that moment, Lin Dong perceived that the desperate hunger of humanity bore a striking resemblance to that of zombies. Both had lost their sanity and were nearing the brink of savagery. "Where's the food? Speak, or I'll kill you." One of the boys, unable to contain himself, swung the steel pipe towards Lin Dong's face. This boy, athletic and strong, wielded the pipe with such force that an ordinary person would find it impossible to withstand. Yet Lin Dong raised his hand and, with a resounding thud, grasped the steel pipe, remaining utterly unmoved as if it were a mere twig. The boy's face contorted in shock as he struggled to withdraw the pipe. But Lin Dong's grip was like that of a vice. No matter how hard he tried, it was futile. The other two boys were equally astonished, contemplating joining their comrade. At that moment, Lin Dong opened his mouth and, astonishingly, spoke. Having undergone several days of evolution, he had regained some semblance of his linguistic abilities, albeit awkwardly and stiffly, emitting strange, obscure sounds from his hoarse throat. "You are the food." Hiss. Upon hearing this, several individuals instinctively gasped, their hearts gripped by an overwhelming terror as the hairs on their bodies stood on end. They had come to a horrifying realization. Lin Dong was a zombie. The young man, paralyzed with fear, felt his legs weaken and relinquished the steel pipe in his grasp, retreating frantically. Yet, with a swift motion, Lin Dong thrust the pipe into the young man's mouth, his immense strength piercing through. Blood splattered violently, creating a gruesome scene. Su Shan and the other two young men turned pale, their terror reaching an apex at witnessing such brutality for the first time. "Run!" someone shouted, prompting the trio to hastily open the door and tumble outside. However, as they turned, they collided with a wall of flesh, the force of the impact sending them sprawling to the ground. Looking up, they beheld a towering figure, nearly 2 meters tall, its muscles grotesquely bulging, the zombie known as Tank. With a deafening roar that reverberated through the air, Tank slammed a fist down upon one of the boys, shattering his skull like a ripe watermelon. Blood spraying in all directions. Su Shan, splattered with crimson, stood frozen in shock. At that moment, an eerie giggle echoed in her ear. Instinctively turning her head, she was met with the grotesque visage of a female zombie, its tongue licking its nails, mere inches away. "Ah!" Su Shan screamed, feeling a warm dampness spread in her trousers, paralyzed by an overwhelming physiological terror. Just then, Lin Dong emerged from the dormitory. Tank and the female zombie ceased their attacks, instead standing respectfully beside Lin Dong, their expressions a mix of pride and deference, as if to showcase their successful capture of these unfortunate prey. Meanwhile, a scholarly zombie crouched on the ground, prodding a corpse with its nails, extracting veins one by one, seemingly engrossed in some macabre study. This scene was even more bizarre than Tank's violent rampage. Su Shan and the last surviving young man, trembling and pale, finally comprehended the dreadful truth. Lin Dong was the leader of these zombies. "Please, don't kill me. I realize my mistakes. I'm so sorry." The young man fell to his knees, tears and snot streaming down his face. The bravado he once exhibited completely vanished. Su Shan, regaining her senses, quickly joined in his pleas. "Lin Dong, didn't you love me the most? I'm your wife. Please don't kill me. I'll give you anything you want." Lin Dong approached her slowly, his expression still cold and unyielding. With a flick of his wrist, a dagger appeared, which he drove directly into Su Shan's chest. "I merely wish to see your heart." With a blood-curdling scream, the corridor was once again filled with the echoes of despair as Lin Dong extracted a heart from her chest, causing even Tank to gaze longingly at the gruesome prize. Su Shan lay lifeless, her eyes wide open, still reflecting the terror and despair she experienced in her final moments. The dagger in Lin Dong's hand was stained with a vivid crimson, resembling a colossal lollipop. However, he held it in disdain, knowing he would never partake in it, and casually tossed it aside to Tank. Tank eagerly devoured it, akin to Zhu Beiji consuming the ginseng fruit. In the midst of it all, the last remaining boy in the room wept incessantly, confronted by a scene far too gruesome and horrifying, surpassing the limits of human psyche. The nearby female zombie, upon hearing his cries, emitted a series of sinister chuckles, perhaps finding amusement in his sorrow or attempting to console him, suggesting that today was a fine day and he ought to cease his weeping. Consequently, her sharp claws plunged into the boy's neck, severing his carotid artery. His cries abruptly ceased, and the corridor fell into an eerie silence. Before long, the sounds of gnawing and chewing echoed through the desolate hallway as several corpses commenced their gruesome feast. Having dispatched these individuals, Lin Dong felt an exhilarating sense of relief and abruptly remembered that the school cafeteria might still harbor supplies. There existed a freezer designated for the storage of fresh meat. Since he was already there, he might as well gather more provisions. Thus, he led 3 of his subordinates out of the dormitory building, traversing a playground, and arriving at the cafeteria. Lin Dong noted the increased density of zombies in the vicinity, particularly at the entrance, where 4 or 5 zombies were frantically battering against the glass door, drawn by some unseen allure, desperate to gain entry. The glass bore the imprints of bloodied hands, forming a grotesque tapestry of crimson smudges. Could there be survivors within the cafeteria? Lin Dong pondered. However, these dim-witted zombies seemed oblivious to the fact that the door swung outward. They merely crowded together, pushing inward, utterly incapable of opening it. Observing their folly, Lin Dong commanded Tank to clear the path. With a low growl, Tank surged forward, seizing one of the zombies and hurling it against the wall. The impact was violent, leaving the creature as little more than a splattered mess that slowly slid down, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. The remaining zombies were similarly dispatched by Tank's might. Though they growled in defiance, they were clearly intimidated by Tank and retreated in fear. Yet, Tank's intelligence was not significantly superior to that of the zombies. He too attempted to push the glass door inward. However, his immense strength led to a resounding crash as the door shattered, the frame contorting under the force. This demonstrated that in the face of overwhelming power, finesse was rendered unnecessary. As Lin Dong stepped into the cafeteria, the first floor was eerily quiet, the air thick with the stench of decay. Several corpses lay scattered on the ground, all having suffered head wounds. Their blood had long since dried, leaving behind dark purple stains. It was evident that they had been slain by human survivors. As the cataclysmic event erupted at 9 in the morning, the canteen was not particularly crowded, rendering it a relatively safe zone. However, should any survivors exist, they would undoubtedly congregate in the storeroom, for it housed ample provisions essential for human survival. Lin Dong hastened towards the storeroom. Shortly thereafter, he came upon a pair of grand iron doors, firmly shut. He approached and pushed against them, but they remained immovable, tightly locked. Inside, he discerned faint whispers. Though the voices were soft, Lin Dong's keen hearing captured every word. "Oh, it seems a zombie is approaching. What should we do?" A female voice quivered in fear. "Don't be afraid. I will protect you," a male companion reassured, wrapping his arms around her. Yet, the girl remained anxious. "Perhaps we should flee quickly," she suggested. "Humph. If you two wish to leave, then go. Staying here is merely wasting rations." A middle-aged chef, dressed in his culinary attire, retorted disdainfully. The young man furrowed his brow, intending to retort, but the sight of the chef wielding a boning knife silenced him. Within the storeroom, 5 individuals sought refuge. In addition to the chef and the young couple, there were 2 other young women. Upon hearing the sound of the door being pushed, their faces were etched with dread. One of the young women, strikingly beautiful with delicate lips pressed together, was none other than Su Xiaoro, the stockroom manager Lin Dong had previously encountered at the supermarket. Hailing from a modest background, she juggled work and studies, and after being dismissed by Lin Dong, she had taken up a part-time position in the school canteen as a stockroom manager. Despite her alluring appearance attracting suitors, she preferred self-sufficiency, possessing a strong sense of independence. "Surely the zombies cannot get in, right?" Su Xiaoro said, her voice trembling. "Indeed," the chef affirmed, "these zombies are rather foolish. They cannot even breach the glass doors outside, let alone this locked storeroom door." The others nodded in agreement, their hearts feeling a tad more at ease. However, at that moment, a resounding crash echoed as a massive fist imprint emerged on the sturdy iron door, the outline of 5 fingers distinctly visible, indicating formidable strength. Such laborious tasks of assaulting the door were certainly the domain of a tank. With fists akin to sandbags, it struck the iron door once more. Bang! The entire door trembled violently, dust cascading from its frame as the imprint deepened. The 5 individuals inside were rendered speechless. What on earth is that? I don't know. Perhaps the zombies have mutated? What? Quick, run. As the iron door could not withstand the onslaught, the 5 stumbled toward the corridor, where a small cold storage unit awaited them at the end. Yet, before they could take more than a few steps, the tank struck again, and with a sharp crack, half of the iron door was obliterated. Its muscular form squeezed through the opening. My heavens! As a few individuals turned to glance back, they were instantly filled with awe, for they had never encountered such formidable zombies, sending a chill of fear coursing through their veins. The chef, wielding a bone-cutting steel knife, sprinted ahead, the first to reach the freezer. "Hurry inside. The zombies are approaching." Just then, a chilling cackle echoed through the dim corridor, reminiscent of a vengeful spirit. The chef focused his gaze and noticed a gaunt figure darting towards them from behind the tank, moving with astonishing speed like a fierce gust of wind. Meanwhile, the young man from the couple, running in second place, also arrived at the cold storage. However, his girlfriend, along with Su Xiaoro, lagged behind. "Wait for me." The girlfriend cried out anxiously, but the young man realized that the terrifying female zombie was almost upon her, leaving no time to spare. "Close the door." The young man steeled himself, and, seizing the moment when the third girl rushed inside, the 3 of them united their strength to push the freezer door shut. With a resounding bang, the cold storage door sealed. The girl had just reached the doorway, pounding on it frantically, as if driven mad. "Open the door. Please. Open the door." But despite the pain in her fists, there was no response from within, no indication that the door would budge. Despair enveloped her heart as she could never forget the vicious expression her boyfriend wore while closing the door, just moments after vowing to protect her. What a scoundrel! At that moment, a gust of wind swept past her, and as she turned to look, her heart sank in terror. The female zombie was now mere meters away. In a moment of desperation, she pushed Su Xiaoro forward, hoping to buy herself some time. Ah! Su Xiaoro cried out as a tremendous force knocked her to the ground. The female zombie leapt onto her, pinning her wrists to the ground with its claws, rendering Su Xiaoro's struggles futile. Hee hee, the zombie chuckled. Perhaps exhilarated from the hunt earlier with Lin Dong, having feasted on ample blood and flesh, displaying an unusually cheerful demeanor at the sight of prey. Yet, this eerie laughter was truly spine-chilling. Su Xiaoro, staring into the crazed face so close to her, was overwhelmed with terror and despair. At that moment, she wished only for a swift death. Thus, she ceased her struggles and closed her eyes, awaiting the monstrous jaws to descend upon her. However, instead of attacking, the female zombie, after finishing her laughter, released Su Xiaoro and leapt towards the girl in front. Ah! The girl let out a piercing scream as pain shot through her neck. The zombie bit down hard, causing violent tremors to ripple through her body, her eyes widening in despair. Yet, she could not fathom why the zombies did not abandon Su Xiaoro and instead directed their aggression towards herself. However, her agonized screams abruptly ceased, and she lost consciousness. At that moment, Su Xiaoro remained sprawled on the ground, her eyes still tightly shut. Curiously, she pondered. Why did she not feel any pain? Could it be that she had already perished? Yet, upon further reflection, this did not seem plausible. She should still be alive. Tentatively, she began to open her eyes, and as her vision gradually returned, she discerned a tall figure standing before her. His skin was pale, and his features remarkably handsome. As he gazed down upon her, "Is that the boss?" Su Xiaoro's eyes widened in astonishment as she recognized the man before her. It was none other than Lin Dong, the owner of the supermarket where she had previously worked. She could hardly believe she encountered him in such circumstances. Lin Dong tilted his head and assessed the situation. The reason he had not killed Su Xiaoro was not primarily due to their past acquaintance. Rather, he found her to be quick and efficient in her tasks, and he happened to be in need of a servant to assist with cleaning, laundry, and dishwashing. To regard Su Xiaoro merely as flesh and blood would be a waste. After all, he had no shortage of food and could afford to keep her around for the time being. "Get up," Lin Dong commanded in a terse tone. Su Xiaoro, sensing something amiss, realized that Lin Dong too seemed to have transformed into a zombie, and the imposing figure of Tank stood obediently by his side, her legs trembling. She leaned against the wall for support and managed to rise unsteadily. "Boss, are you all right?" she stammered. Lin Dong nodded. Perhaps buoyed by the fact that he had dispatched Su Shan earlier that day, his mood surprisingly pleasant as he inquired, "Would you be willing to return to work?" I would," she replied eagerly, recognizing this as a chance to survive. She nodded vigorously, akin to a chick pecking at grains. She feared that a single negative response might result in her immediate demise. Although much remained unclear, preserving her life took precedence. Previously, she had worked for Lin Dong to earn money for her tuition. Now, her labor would directly equate to her survival. Upon receiving her affirmative answer, Lin Dong paid her no further heed and walked past her, leading Tank to the cold storage door. The supplies Lin Dong required were contained within. Tank stepped forward, raising his massive fist and striking the cold storage door with tremendous force. Bang, bang, bang. Each blow resonated like a heavy hammer, causing the ground to tremble and dust to rain down from the walls. However, the cold storage door remained steadfast, while Tank's arms grew numb from the impact. Inside the cold storage, 3 individuals leaned against the door, their nerves taut as a drawn bowstring, teetering on the brink of panic, holding their breath in silence. "Why is this zombie so formidable?" One of the young men furrowed his brow. Meanwhile, the chef retained a semblance of composure. "Rest assured, the door of this cold storage is crafted from 5-centimeter thick stainless steel. Not even a truck can breach it, and no matter how formidable the zombies may be, they cannot gain entry." The other 2 individuals felt a sense of relief upon hearing this. Outside, the Tank relentlessly battered the door, yet after a brief moment, it made no progress whatsoever. The Tank roared in frustration, its anger escalating as it contemplated the desire to pulverize those inside into mere flesh to consume. However, given its current capabilities, breaching the door was beyond its reach. Observing from the rear, Lin Dong realized that since the Tank was ineffective, he must take matters into his own hands. Just as he prepared to act, Su Xiaoro approached him, her bright eyes reflecting unwavering determination. She harbored immense resentment towards the 3 individuals who had left her outside. "Boss, I possess the key to the cold storage." Lin Dong raised an eyebrow, finding her revelation quite advantageous, sparing him considerable trouble. Truly, she was the most formidable worker contributing to the team shortly after joining. As the warehouse manager, Su Xiaoro naturally held the key to the cold storage, though its size made it cumbersome to carry. It had always hung on the wall of the adjacent room. After retrieving the key, she handed it to Lin Dong. He commanded the tank to retreat and stepped forward with the key in hand. The tank, of course, could not comprehend his actions. If its massive fists could not break through, how could a mere stick do so? Meanwhile, the three inside, upon hearing the sudden silence outside, felt an overwhelming surge of hope. Huh, I told you that the zombie couldn't break in. It must have given up, the chef declared triumphantly. The male nodded in agreement. Yes, if we wait a bit longer, the zombie will likely disperse, and we can return to the warehouse. However, no sooner had these words left his mouth than a sudden, creaking noise emanated from the lock's mechanism at the door's edge, the sound of the lock cylinder turning. The chef's eyes widened in horror, his expression akin to that of someone who had just consumed a rotten fly. As he realized that the zombie was indeed attempting to unlock the door, the male was equally incredulous, his complexion paling to a ghastly gray. How could this be? What shall we do? The female trembled, sobbing softly. Despite their best efforts to comprehend the situation, they could not fathom how a zombie could unlock a door. With the lock cylinder turning, it became evident that the door was on the verge of being opened. Quick, move the furniture and brace the door, the chef urged, recognizing this as their only recourse. Yet, ultimately, all their efforts were in vain. As the lock clicked open, the tank surged forward with sudden force, crashing the door open, sending everything braced against it scattering in all directions. Chapter 13. The roadblock. As the door swung open, a young figure stood at the threshold. Clad in a pristine white shirt, his appearance immaculate, with an air of coldness etched upon his handsome visage. The three inside stared, their eyes wide with astonishment. What on earth was this, human or specter? Behind the young man stood a tank and female zombies, exuding an aura of menace and oppression. The three chefs, upon casting a glance, noticed a girl's silhouette among them, none other than Su Xiaoro, who had previously been locked outside. Their faces registered astonishment, disbelief coursing through their minds. You are still alive? Indeed, quite unexpected, isn't it? Su Xiaoro's delicate face was flushed with indignation, her ire directed at the three, who had foolishly left her outside. Fortunately, she had encountered her boss. Had it been otherwise, she might have met her demise at their hands. At that moment, the three zombie minions advanced menacingly. The tank remained irritable, growling incessantly, yet he held a deep admiration for Lin Dong. Truly, the leader was remarkable, effortlessly prying open the door with a mere stick. He had contemplated that if he were allowed inside, the trio would not emerge unscathed. The female zombie, vibrant with excitement, wore an expression on her pale, ghastly face that was simultaneously amused and eerie. Woo, Xiaoro, I beg you, save me. I do not wish to be devoured by zombies. I truly do not want to die. The girl knelt in supplication, her earlier resolute demeanor vanished. In truth, the two had known each other for some time, and had previously enjoyed a decent relationship. Su Xiaoro shook her head. Your fate is not mine to decide. It hinges on how my boss chooses to handle you. All eyes turned to Lin Dong, the clean, fair-skinned, and handsome young man who was, in fact, the leader of the zombies. Please, do not kill me. If you spare my life, I will do anything you ask. The girl wept. The chef chimed in, brother, I can cook. I'm an excellent chef, having won several city competitions. They had recognized that relying on Lin Dong's compassion for mercy was utterly futile. They needed to showcase their worth, perhaps offering a glimmer of hope. However, Lin Dong looked at the chef and spoke slowly. There is no need for such complexities. Let us simply dine. Huh. The chef's eyes widened as he seemed to grasp the underlying implication. With a roar, the three minions lunged forward, their hunger overwhelming as they pounced upon the group, shrieks of terror echoing in the air. In mere moments, it was all over, replaced by the gruesome sounds of flesh being torn asunder. Amidst this horrifying tableau of a zombie feast, Lin Dong remained unperturbed, strolling leisurely through the cold storage, examining the array of supplies around him. The stock here was comprehensive: beef, lamb, chicken, duck, fish, and more, with ample quantities available. With a wave of his hand, he gathered everything into his storage space, replenishing nearly all that had been consumed in the past 2 days. He felt a sense of satisfaction with this haul. Meanwhile, the three zombie minions were indulging themselves, the tank and female zombie ravenously devouring their meals, creating a scene that was both bloody and terrifying. The peculiar nature of the Dr. Zombie is truly remarkable. He first disembowels the corpse, meticulously extracting each organ as if engaged in a dissection, before devouring them one by one. Although the Dr. Zombie appears somewhat more refined, he is even more bizarre than the others. The sight of a zombie performing such an autopsy is simply unbearable. However, the one suffering the most is undoubtedly Su Xiaoro, the sole normal human amidst the chaos. Witnessing the gruesome spectacle of the zombie feasting, her stomach churns violently, and she is on the brink of retching. Yet, she resolutely covers her mouth, stifling the urge to vomit, as she is aware of Lin Dong's somewhat fastidious nature. Should she succumb to her nausea, it could very well provoke him to take drastic measures against her. Fortunately, it does not take long for Lin Dong to finish gathering supplies, which include not only fresh meat from the cold storage, but also grains and oils from the storeroom. Additionally, the cafeteria houses a convenience store stocked with beer, cigarettes, sunflower seeds, beverages, bottled water, instant noodles, sausages, and a plethora of snacks, all of which are collected into his spatial storage. After all, these resources are rare commodities. In the outside world, humans might resort to violence over a mere loaf of bread. Lin Dong's spatial domain offers ample room, allowing him to hoard these supplies for potential future use. The 3 zombie minions have also completed their meal. They now encircle Su Xiaoro, scrutinizing her with curiosity. The female zombie smiles, occasionally patting her head, seemingly finding amusement in their leader's acquisition of this little pet, akin to playing with a cat or dog. Su Xiaoro curls up tightly, resembling a frightened chick in the wind, trembling uncontrollably, her once rosy complexion now drained of color. She had never imagined that one day she would be the subject of a zombie's attention. Upon receiving Lin Dong's command, the female zombie gives Su Xiaoro one last pat on the head before turning to leave. Almost paralyzed with fear, Su Xiaoro contemplates her future among these creatures, her heart heavy with anxiety. The boss won't kill me, right? She muses. Lin Dong nods, in a surprisingly good mood and eager to tease her. Have you forgotten? I used to run a breeding farm. Ah. Su Xiaoro's expression turns blank. What does that mean? Is he likening her to livestock? They soon depart from the campus, with Su Xiaoro taking the wheel. She eagerly volunteers as the driver, keen to prove her value as an employee and avoid incurring her boss's wrath. Having driven the cargo van during her time at the supermarket, she maneuvers it with ease, displaying her skills as a seasoned driver. The journey is remarkably smooth, earning her a 5-star rating from Tank, who resides in the back. The streets remain in disarray, littered with scattered zombies, yet they pose no threat to the cargo truck. At a crossroads, a heavy truck came to a halt, occupied by 2 emaciated middle-aged men. One of them, sporting a scruffy beard, held a half-smoked cigarette, inhaling its scent with reluctance to ignite it. Damn it. That kid Wang Tsong was supposed to be gathering supplies. Where has he gone? Perhaps he has ended up in the belly of a zombie. After such a long silence, he must be done for, mused the other gaunt man. The bearded one replied, surely not. Brother Long said he got through to him on the phone, but there was no conversation before it was abruptly disconnected. He must have abandoned his wife and fled. Ah, let us not dwell on that too much. We need to find something to eat. I'm on the brink of starvation, lamented the gaunt man. The bearded one continued to sniff at the cigarette. There's nothing left to eat. It has all been scavenged. Suddenly, amidst their conversation, the roar of an engine reached their ears. From the left fork of the road, a delivery truck approached in the distance. Chapter 14, Construction Site. The 2 men, seasoned drivers, deduced from the tire pressure and trajectory that this delivery truck was heavily laden. Look, food is finally here. A glimmer of hope flickered in the gaunt man's eyes. They presumed that it must be a survivor returning from a successful supply run. I wonder if there are any cigarettes inside, the bearded man said, his expression filled with anticipation. As the delivery truck drew nearer, they saw more clearly that a beautiful girl was at the wheel. She is unfortunate to have crossed paths with us. A sinister glint flashed in the gaunt man's eyes as he slowly revved the truck, positioning it perfectly to block the road ahead. With a screech, Su Xiaoro, witnessing the sudden turn of events, slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the asphalt, leaving dark skid marks. The delivery truck came to a sudden stop, barely a meter away from the heavy truck. That was close, Su Xiaoro thought, her heart racing. The abrupt halt caused the entire delivery truck to shudder, and due to inertia, the back end jolted forward. Feeling frustrated, she decided to give Su Xiaoro a 5-star review in installments. Meanwhile, Lin Dong remained remarkably calm. Even with a mere thought, he could discern what was unfolding. Indeed, 2 men jumped from the truck, their arms wrapped in duct tape and newspaper, wielding a bloodstained steel pipe. You two, get out of the vehicle, shouted the bearded man immediately. Su Xiaoro glanced at Lin Dong and quickly grasped the situation. In this post-apocalyptic world, cannibalism was commonplace, and they had a singular objective, to survive at any cost. Boss, what should we do? Lin Dong remained silent, observing the 2 men, whose appearance bore a striking resemblance to Wang Tsong, the one who had previously vandalized his supermarket, suggesting they hailed from the same locality. Casting a glance into the distance, Lin Dong noticed a construction site. That was the headquarters for the food delivery service. He couldn't be bothered with the lowly figures before him and delegated the matter to his subordinate. Unbeknownst to the 2 middle-aged men, they were oblivious to the impending danger. Instead, they approached the delivery van with lewd grins. "Don't be afraid, beautiful. Your brother will cherish you well," the gaunt man leered. At that moment, the female zombie in the cargo area suddenly perked up, her neck straightening as she regained her senses. "Beautiful? I think someone is calling me. To be cherished." The notion of being adored by humans felt appealing, and they seemed so warm. Thus, she pushed open the cargo door and leaped out. The gaunt man happened to reach the van door just then. If the occupants inside did not comply, he intended to force the door open. "Oh, the little girl is quite pretty," he said. "If you cooperate, I might spare your life." "Cooperate?" Suddenly, an eerie laughter echoed in the man's ears. It was evident that the female zombie had feasted well today and evolved. Beyond her basic expressions of joy and sorrow, she could now mimic simple musical scales. Hearing that sound sent chills down the man's spine. He turned to see the slender figure of the female zombie, her face adorned with a sinister smile. "To be cherished." The zombie swayed and lunged at him like a gust of wind, her speed unparalleled, leaving afterimages in her wake. "Holy hell!" the man exclaimed in shock. He raised a steel pipe, but the female zombie was too swift, knocking him to the ground and sliding him several meters away. "Brother, come help me," he yelled desperately, struggling against her. However, the bearded man paid him no mind, instead making his way to the back of the van. "Cigarettes, I need to find some smokes first." "You." The gaunt man was about to curse, but a sharp pain gripped his neck. He had already received the zombie's affection. At that moment, he was genuinely in pain. Meanwhile, the bearded man hurried to the back of the van, imagining it filled with supplies, cigarettes, perhaps fine wine, and a plethora of delectable treats. He could hardly contain his excitement and abruptly yanked open the cargo door. However, what greeted him were the faces of two terrifying zombies. The doctor zombie regarded him with keen interest, seemingly finding the situation amusing. The tank-like zombie remained irritable, contemplating that the earlier jolt was undoubtedly the fault of this foolish man. The bearded man's eyes widened in shock. He was left in a daze. Clearly, the delightful scene he had envisioned had not materialized. Instead, he found himself confronted by two horrifying zombies. Yet, in the next moment, he seemed to grasp something and quickly removed the half-burned cigarette from his ear, lighting it and taking 2 deep puffs, enveloped in a cloud of smoke. His expression one of satisfaction. Moments later, a large hand forcefully dragged him into the vehicle. In mere seconds, the surroundings returned to a serene stillness. Su Xiaoro in the car could only grimace repeatedly, lamenting the unfortunate fate of the two individuals who dared to obstruct her boss. At that moment, Lin Dong finally spoke. "Let us proceed to the construction site nearby." "Oh, certainly," Su Xiaoro promptly replied. Though she was unaware of the purpose of their visit, she understood that as a worker, one must embrace the mindset of obedience. Where the boss directs, one follows without question. She restarted the vehicle, maneuvering around the obstructing truck, and headed towards the construction site. The site was enclosed by blue metal sheeting, with the entrance gate collapsed. Scattered around were numerous corpses of zombies, trampled by trucks, with severed limbs and bloodstains that painted a gruesome scene. The cargo truck, following the tracks, surged directly into the heart of the site. Lin Dong assessed that this construction area likely housed several survivors, having transformed into a makeshift stronghold. Previously, individuals like Wang Tsong had harassed him, and encountering 2 more roadblocks today suggested they hailed from this very location. To prevent further disturbances, Lin Dong resolved to eliminate this threat entirely. Upon receiving the signal to hunt, 3 of his subordinates leapt from the vehicle, their expressions ignited with exhilaration. They thought to themselves how fortunate it was to follow their leader, always uncovering prey and feasting upon ample flesh and blood. Within the construction site, an eerie tranquility prevailed. All zombies had been dispatched, cleared away by makeshift weapons. Clearly, the inhabitants here possessed commendable fighting prowess. Ahead stood an unfinished building, half-constructed and desolate. Yet in one corner loomed a peculiar structure. This edifice, crafted from reinforced concrete, was immensely solid, devoid of windows, and even the entrance was fashioned from steel plates. The door lacked glass, featuring only a few fist-sized ventilation holes. Towering 3 stories high and expansive, it resembled a fortress, evidently constructed for the purpose of defending against zombies. Chapter 15. The excavator. Thanks to the zombie's acute sensory abilities, Lin Dong had already detected signs of human activity within, accompanied by a faint scent of blood, leaving him curious about the unfolding events. His 3 subordinates, sensing the essence of prey, exhibited expressions brimming with excitement as they dashed towards the apocalyptic stronghold. Inside that building, indeed, there were quite a number of survivors, over 10 individuals, including several construction workers, thugs from the streets, and the developer of the site, Zhao Peng. He was the very one who had purchased Lin Dong's farm and had extended loans to him. Quite the unfortunate soul. At the onset of the apocalypse, He had been conducting an inspection at the site with his subordinates when they encountered the zombies. Without hesitation, he organized a team to construct a fortress of reinforced concrete, thereby narrowly escaping disaster and surviving to this day. Zhao Peng remains the leader of this fortress, accompanied by his capable subordinate, Xing Tianlong, and a few hired hands, overseeing a group of construction workers. "Boss, our dispatch team has yet to return," Xing Tianlong remarked, furrowing his brow. Zhao Peng, equally troubled, understood that while the fortress provided safety, their supplies were dwindling. They had run out of food and were left with empty bellies. If it came to desperation, they might have to resort to consuming some flesh, though the risk of prion disease loomed uncertainly. "Boss, that's unlikely," a bespectacled woman interjected, Zhao Peng's educated secretary. "Prion diseases only manifest post-mortem. As long as we consume live flesh, we should be safe." "Zhao, why don't I lead a team to find some food?" Xing Tianlong proposed. Zhao Peng shook his head decisively. "No, it's too perilous outside." "Have no fear, boss. Back in my street fighting days, I wielded a machete and charged through 3 blocks without so much as blinking. The strength of those zombies pales in comparison to that of the living." "But if you don't blink, won't your eyes dry out?" Zhao Peng inquired. Xing Tianlong was left speechless, having spoken of slashing at foes only to be questioned about his eyes. At that moment, they heard the unmistakable roar of engines outside the fortress. A vehicle had entered the construction site. Xing Tianlong's eyes gleamed with hope. "Boss, it could be the second-in-command returning. Let us go check." Zhao Peng felt a surge of energy and hastened toward the fortress's entrance, hopeful they might have brought back food. The fortress's robust steel gate was formidable, adorned with fist-sized vents that not only facilitated airflow, but also allowed them to observe the outside world. Peering through, they were instantly gripped by terror. It was not the second-in-command, but rather a few horrifying zombies. The ghastly grin of a female zombie loomed at the vent, separated from them by merely a door, creating an unnerving atmosphere. Eager to reach them, the female zombie clawed at the steel door, her sharp nails scraping against the steel, producing a chilling screech. "Damn it!" Zhao Peng and Xing Tianlong stumbled back in fright, nearly losing their balance. "There are actually zombies. Do not worry, boss. Zombies cannot breach this fortress," Xing Tianlong reassured. "Indeed." Zhao Peng nodded, acknowledging the eerie nature of the zombies yet confident in the fortress's impenetrability. Suddenly, a series of powerful thuds echoed as a tank began to strike, causing the entire building to tremble. The remaining survivors of the fortress, startled, flocked to the entrance to ascertain the disturbance. With a mighty roar, the tank unleashed its strength. However, even with such power, it could not breach the cold storage, let alone this specially constructed fortress. After a few futile strikes, it ultimately relented. Obediently standing behind Lin Dong, he awaited the elder brother's command to act, producing a small stick to pry open the steel gate. Had this zombie undergone a mutation? Its strength was astonishing. Zhao Peng felt an unsettling dread. It was his first encounter with such a phenomenon. Since the apocalypse began, bizarre occurrences had become increasingly frequent. "Do not worry," Xing Tianlong waved dismissively. "Even if it were a dinosaur, it could not breach our defenses, unless zombies have learned to operate excavators and dig us out." Zhao Peng nodded, emboldened by the reassurance. "Let me take another look at what this zombie looks like." He approached the vent once more, tilting his head to peer outside. To his astonishment, he spotted a young man standing outside, flanked by 3 peculiar zombies. Was that Lin Dong? Recognition washed over Zhao Peng, igniting a surge of anger within him. Lin Dong had sold the breeding farm to him before the apocalypse, taking out a loan of 80 million, and to this day still owed him money. Serves him right. A zombie now, indeed a fitting retribution, Zhao Peng muttered under his breath, though he couldn't help but admire the cleanliness Lin Dong maintained even in his undead state. "Zhao, we need not concern ourselves with them," Xing Tianlong remarked. "They cannot enter. So let them wreak havoc for now. They will likely leave shortly." With that, Zhao Peng turned away from the door and seated himself in a chair. Outside, Lin Dong fixated on the structure. Even with the key, the door remained unyielding, yet with his enhanced physical strength, he could easily puncture it. However, he was reluctant to soil his clothing. Thus, with a wave of his hand, Lin Dong retrieved an enormous metallic contraption from his storage space, a colossal excavator, complete with a massive shovel attached to its steel arm. This was a piece he had brought from the breeding farm, and today it would prove invaluable. With a thunderous roar, the steel machine roared to life, and Lin Dong maneuvered the excavator toward the fortress. The reinforced concrete was dauntingly thick, complicating the excavation process. He decided to start from the surface, tunneling his way in. What on earth is that noise? Zhao Peng and the others inside the fortress were startled by the machine's rumble. They rushed to the entrance, peering through the vent. To their disbelief, a metallic behemoth was slowly advancing toward them. An excavator? Was that zombie an alumnus of the Blue Sky School? The scene before them shattered their previous understanding of the world. Xing Tianlong was equally dumbfounded. He had just mentioned an excavator, and now it was manifesting before them. He could scarcely fathom that a zombie would actually operate such a machine. Now the question arose, which excavator technology was truly superior? As Lin Dong continued to dig, a large pit quickly formed at the entrance. The ground within the fortress began to crumble incessantly, while sunlight streamed in through the gap beneath the door. Quickly, grab your weapons. Prepare to fight, Xing Tianlong declared fiercely, turning to issue commands. Whether they were henchmen or construction workers, they all drew out machetes or steel pipes. Some even produced a chainsaw that buzzed ominously. Their numbers were overwhelming, exuding a formidable aura. Indeed, let us confront them head-on. Chapter 16, Awakening Abilities Before Long. The ground at the entrance was breached. With a thunderous roar, the tank was the first to charge in, lifting a hefty block of granite and hurling it into the crowd. The stone struck with the force of 1,000 pounds, toppling 2 individuals to the ground. Hee. As the female zombie entered, one henchman seized the moment, aiming his blade at her head. However, the female zombie was remarkably swift. With a flick of her hand, her sharp claws shredded his forearm. Ah! He cried out in agony, the pain causing him to drop his weapon. Yet, the female zombie seized the opportunity, grasping the fallen blade with an eerie smile, swinging it towards the henchman's neck. My goodness! The henchman was taken aback. It was his first encounter with a zombie that could wield a weapon. The female zombie, having undergone professional training, delivered a strike that severed his neck as effortlessly as slicing through tofu. Those around them were equally astonished. This zombie knows how to use a knife. What the hell do we do now? However, the situation escalated further. As a few individuals conferred, a crossbow bolt soared through the air, piercing one man's skull. Glancing over, they spotted the doctor zombie, armed with a crossbow, preparing to load another arrow. This was outrageous. Those who had just resolved to fight now felt utterly deflated, realizing they were no match for such adversaries. A massacre loomed on the horizon. In a panic, they began to flee, discarding their helmets and armor. When Lin Dong finally entered, the battle was nearly over. The fortress was strewn with corpses, drenched in blood, resembling a slaughterhouse. Lin Dong stepped further inside, flanked by 3 zombie subordinates who ceased their killing, obediently trailing behind him. They could still sense the presence of living beings within. Upon reaching a certain room, Lin Dong discovered extinguished campfires on the floor, alongside a chilling pile of white bones, marked with the unmistakable impressions of human teeth. There was no need for further contemplation. Lin Dong understood the horrors that had transpired here. In the corner of the room, he faintly heard the sound of labored breathing. With a roar, the tank turned violently toward that direction. However, as Lin Dong approached, he found a woman lying exposed on the ground, her legs gruesomely severed. Bound at the severed limb with a rubber band and crudely bandaged with ragged cloth to prevent excessive blood loss and avert imminent death. For once a soul departs, prion proteins will manifest within the body. Thus, the woman, pale-faced and barely breathing, lingered on the precipice of death, yet upon hearing a disturbance, she slowly opened her eyes. She beheld Lin Dong and his entourage of zombies, devoid of any fear. Instead, a glimmer of light flickered in her eyes, revealing a sense of liberation. Lin Dong comprehended her unspoken desire, a longing for him to end her life. For in her eyes, Zhao Peng and his companions were far more brutal than the zombies before her. In that moment, the tank transformed into a compassionate figure, personally fulfilling her wish. Meanwhile, Zhao Peng, along with Xing Tianlong and others, had retreated into the last room of the fortress, with no escape left. What shall we do, Zhao? The zombies will soon arrive. Xing Tianlong lamented, at a loss for solutions. Zhao Peng remained relatively composed. These zombies wield weapons and can operate excavators. They surely possess human intelligence. Perhaps we could negotiate with them. Indeed, Xing Tianlong nodded vigorously, finding reason in Zhao's words. If a dialogue could be established, survival could be within reach, igniting a flicker of hope within him. Zhao continued, moreover, I had some rapport with Lin Dong before the apocalypse. He may spare us. That would be splendid. Xing Tianlong felt a surge of admiration. Truly, Zhao Peng's connections were vast. Even in the face of the apocalypse, they proved advantageous. Just then, Lin Dong and his cohorts emerged from the corridor, their footsteps slowly drawing nearer, instilling a profound sense of dread. Zhao Peng, feeling his throat dry, instinctively swallowed hard, his anxiety reaching its zenith. Wait, Brother Lin, do not kill me. Surely you remember me? I am Zhao Peng, he called out from a distance of several meters. As Lin Dong approached, his gaze scrutinized Zhao, instantly recognizing the familiar visage. Oh, he merely nodded, while the 3 subordinates behind him refrained from launching an immediate attack. A spark of joy ignited within Zhao Peng. It seemed there was hope yet. He pressed on, attempting to rekindle their past connection. Brother Lin, do you recall? I once acquired your farm and lent you a substantial sum. Oh, so you are the creditor, Lin Dong pondered, quickly concluding that this made it all the more imperative to eliminate him. Uffed. Zhao Peng nearly spat blood, realizing he had misspoken. Beside him, Xing Tianlong fretted, wondering why Zhao would utter such words at this critical juncture. Just as Zhao was about to clarify, alas, the opportunity vanished. Lin Dong's 3 subordinates surged forth, swiftly dividing them among themselves. Within the fortress, no survivors remained. Lin Dong collected all the useful items and led his 3 subordinates outside. At that moment, Su Xiaoro was still waiting in the delivery truck. She had just heard the continuous screams and hysterical cries emanating from the building, which painted a picture more horrifying than anything within the confines of the school. Just then, Lin Dong approached her, his pristine white shirt remaining unblemished, as if nothing had transpired at all. "Where to next, boss?" one of his subordinates inquired. "Home," Lin Dong replied succinctly. As the truck slowly started, it swiftly returned to Lin Dong's residence. With Su Xiaoro's arrival, she was assigned to the room adjacent to Lin Dong's, where she diligently performed daily tasks such as laundry, cleaning, and dishwashing. Her commitment was unwavering, for she understood that failing to execute her duties could cost her dearly. Lin Dong, in turn, treated her well, providing her with sustenance, rice, flour, and on good days, frozen steaks or fish, allowing her a taste of variety in her meals. As days passed, Su Xiaoro gradually adapted. Compared to the survivors outside, her daily provisions and shelter in the building granted her a sense of happiness, free from the hardships of life on the streets. During this time, Lin Dong consumed copious amounts of meat. With each evolution, his capacity to digest increased significantly. It was conservatively estimated that he had ingested over 100 tons of beef alone, not accounting for chicken and other sources. Lin Dong could distinctly sense his growing strength, though the extent of his power remained unclear to him. 10 days later, Lin Dong experienced another evolution, marked by a qualitative leap as a crystalline core formed within his mind. Simultaneously, a crimson glimmer flashed in his eyes. "My head itches. It seems my abilities are awakening." Chapter 17. The corpse domain. With a mere thought, Lin Dong expanded a domain around himself, radiating outward. This was his awakened power, the corpse domain. At his current strength, the domain spanned approximately 10 meters, inadvertently enveloping Su Xiaoro, who was mopping nearby. Instantly, her body stiffened, as if paralyzed by a malevolent force, and she began to tremble uncontrollably, engulfed by an overwhelming sense of dread, as if surrounded by a sea of corpses and blood. This demonstrated the substantial oppressive power the corpse domain wielded over humans. "What is happening?" Su Xiaoro was oblivious to the unfolding events. A fleeting glance revealed that Lin Dong, who had been sitting on the sofa watching television, had mysteriously vanished. Whereas the boss, the corpse domain possessed another ability, concealment, but it was not limited to that. To Lin Dong, the world around him was now shrouded in crimson. The once solid walls appeared ethereal, undulating like waves upon water. As he reached out, his hand passed through the wall effortlessly, propelling his body forward. Lin Dong traversed through space, seamlessly moving from the living room to the kitchen as if passing through walls. This bizarre scene was invisible to others. One of the abilities of the corpse domain allowed Lin Dong to disregard terrain, enabling him to walk through walls or objects, even to burrow into the ground. Within this terrifying realm, if he so desired, he could extract a person's heart without any physical obstruction. Such formidable power, Lin Dong mused silently, capable of both murder and survival, was nothing short of perfection. A corpse king who could turn invisible and pass through walls. Who could withstand such a force? However, this ability, classified as a spatial type supernatural power, consumed mental energy and could not be sustained indefinitely. As Lin Dong emerged into the kitchen, Su Xiaoro, who had exited the domain's influence, collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath, her entire being appearing utterly drained. What had just transpired? Where was the boss? At that moment, Lin Dong pushed open the door to the living room and unexpectedly entered from the kitchen. Su Xiaoro's eyes widened in disbelief. The boss had been seated on the sofa just moments ago. How could he have reappeared from the kitchen? The strangeness of it all sent ripples of unease through her heart. "Boss, what just happened?" "Nothing," Lin Dong replied nonchalantly. With his continuous evolution, his linguistic abilities had fully restored, allowing him to speak fluently with a voice imbued with magnetism. To the naked eye, he appeared no different from an ordinary human. "Oh," Su Xiaoro replied, not daring to inquire further, and resumed her diligent task of cleaning the floor. Over the past fortnight, Lin Dong's 3 zombie subordinates had significantly strengthened. The tank had grown larger, towering over 2 meters, with muscles bulging like small mountains, an unmistakable miniature version of the Hulk. The female zombie had become swifter. Lin Dong witnessed her pounce on a human scavenger like a gust of wind, her sharp bone claws slicing through flesh with deadly precision. Her movements resembled those of the character Iori Yagami from the King of Fighters video game. Thus, Lin Dong bestowed upon her the name Xiaoba. The most peculiar among them was the Dr. Zombie, who not only relished in the dismemberment of humans, savoring their entrails one by one, but had recently taken to dissecting other zombies as well, often opening one up to extract various parts. Notably, these three zombie subordinates had amassed a considerable following. Possessing innate kingly potential, they could command other zombies. During their idle time, they congregated near the building. Lin Dong allowed them the freedom to roam, letting them thrive in their savage growth. Moreover, Lin Dong observed an intriguing phenomenon. The zombies on the streets had dramatically increased their running speed, now exceeding that of ordinary humans, no longer moving with the stiffness that characterized the early days of the apocalypse. It was evident that they were evolving. The zombie apocalypse has ignited a frenzy of evolution, rendering them increasingly formidable. Uncertainty looms regarding the fate of humanity. Lin Dong reclined on the sofa, extracting his phone to gather intelligence, for the living still emits signals. As he unlocked his device, a notification caught his eye. Tech Biotech Corporation has devised a zombie eradication plan. Eradication of zombies? Lin Dong had heard of this company. Known for its robust research in viruses and genetics, a titan in the realm of global technology, reminiscent of the Umbrella Corporation in the cinematic universe of Resident Evil. Tech is a multinational entity with a branch in Jiangbei City. Curiosity piqued, Lin Dong delved into the details of the zombie eradication initiative. The announcement proclaimed that Tech has developed a bioweapon known as Hunter No. 1, capable of effectively eliminating zombies, soon to be mass-produced and deployed across various divisions. Accompanying the text was an image of the so-called Hunter, a man-made bioengineered entity, towering nearly 3 meters, clutching a Gatling gun in one hand and adorned with belts of ammunition. A colossal hammer rested on its back, and its oversized head bore the scars of numerous stitches, resembling a grotesque tapestry of centipede-like markings. Lin Dong mused that it was less visually appealing than a zombie, and he hoped it would not cross his path. As he scrolled further, he encountered a statement from Tech Corporation. Currently, major corporations have established shelters where survivors may seek refuge, and our company pledges to ensure your safety. The announcement sparked a flurry of comments from survivors. Tech Corporation is impressive, truly at the forefront of global technology. Even in the apocalypse, they endure. Yet, amidst the admiration, skepticism arose. Do not approach tech shelters. They merely seek to use humans for live experimentation and will not protect us. Some speculated that Hunter No. 1 might be the result of human modification. Indeed, those capable should seek refuge in our official shelters. The comments varied widely, but Lin Dong chose not to dwell on them. The matter of refuge was irrelevant to him. However, the next piece of information proved invaluable. It was an announcement from the official shelter. Following extensive testing, it revealed that certain humans are undergoing evolution, capable of sprinting 100 meters in 6 seconds and delivering a punch with 1 ton of force. Experts suggested that this newfound strength emanates from a growth within the skull known as the brain core. If anyone experiences an itch in their cranium, it is highly likely to herald the onset of evolution. Indeed, humanity is beginning to transform, though as of yet, no one has awakened their abilities. According to the experts, the brain core, upon reaching a certain stage of development, will metamorphose into a crystal nucleus, at which point extraordinary powers will manifest. Evolution is a gradual process. No one suddenly acquires extraordinary abilities. Such a notion seems unrealistic. Lin Dong believed that with ample flesh and blood to sustain him, having absorbed countless energies, whether from humans or zombies, he should be the first to condense a crystal core and awaken his abilities. Chapter 18. Is it tasty? He contemplated capturing 2 human awakeners to sample their flavors. Lin Dong pondered this as he intended to venture out and test his newly awakened powers. Along with the might of the corpse domain, he wondered which fortunate soul might encounter him. Thus, he rose and stepped outside the building. Upon reaching the exterior, the ferocious zombies on the street lowered their heads upon seeing Lin Dong. The zombie king had set forth, and all the undead bowed in submission. His 3 subordinates were free to roam, currently absent from the vicinity, and Lin Dong had no intention of bringing them along. Lacking a definite destination, he refrained from driving, instead meandering along the roadside. The streets were in disarray, littered with shattered glass and mottled bloodstains, while some shadowy corners had become overrun with moss. Occasionally, a rat would squeak and scurry away, clutching a severed finger as it vanished into a drain. The landscape was one of desolation. In this apocalyptic city, Lin Dong remained unblemished, exuding an air of tranquility, as if on a leisurely stroll. After approximately half an hour, Lin Dong suddenly halted. A whiff of fresh blood reached his nostrils, the scent of living beings, easily discernible to his now keen sense of smell. Turning his gaze, he spotted a large gate by the roadside, adorned with 3 bold characters, zoo. Strangely, the premises were eerily empty, devoid of zombies. And not a single corpse lay upon the ground, save for desiccated dark purple bloodstains. This place seemed to have become the domain of some creature. Humans, keep your distance. To ordinary folks, this would undoubtedly be a perilous location. However, Lin Dong was undeterred, proceeding through the gate. The zoo was profoundly quiet, with only the rustle of leaves stirred by the wind. The cages that once housed animals now stood empty, similarly stained with blood. Remnants of fur and gnawed bones littered the ground, a gruesome sight, clearly indicating that something had devoured them. Continuing deeper into the zoo, Lin Dong arrived at the caretaker's quarters, where the building's doors and windows were tightly sealed and reinforced with steel. Despite the silence within, he could still hear the labored breaths of humans, their respiration rapid, suggesting a state of heightened tension. There are people, Lin Dong surmised. Yet he chose not to approach directly, for not far away, 2 men were making their way toward the same building. One was short and stout, with rough skin and a face pockmarked like the surface of the moon, appearing quite grotesque. The other was tall and thin, clad in a suit, resembling a corporate white-collar worker, with a seemingly refined demeanor. Upon observing the attire of the 2 individuals, it was evident that they were not staff members of the zoo. They appeared to be scavengers searching for supplies. However, judging by their vigorous demeanor and robust physique, it was clear they were not in need of sustenance. They exuded vitality and strength far surpassing that of the average human. Could they be awakened beings? Lin Dong pondered, contemplating the notion of delving into their minds. The 2 men, upon noticing the tightly sealed doors and windows, had already surmised that survivors resided within. Ah, there are indeed living souls here, the refined gentleman remarked with a subtle smile. The stout man nodded in agreement. Well, this might bring us some amusement. I wonder if there are any beauties inside. Certainly. I recall the caretakers here are quite lovely, the refined man replied. Relying on their status as awakened beings, they felt emboldened in this post-apocalyptic world where order had crumbled. They scoured for supplies, seeking both provisions and the allure of women, believing they could act with impunity upon discovering any. Let us not rush. First, we should coax them into opening the door, the refined man suggested. Although they were physically formidable, the building was securely sealed, and forcing their way in would require considerable effort. The stout man nodded, indicating his familiarity with such endeavors. He approached the door and knocked gently, fabricating a lie. Hello? Is anyone inside? We are an official rescue team from the shelter, here to assist survivors. Upon hearing the mention of an official rescue team, the occupants within felt a surge of excitement. At last, help had arrived. Inside the building were 4 individuals, 3 female caretakers, and an elderly man. A night watchman at the zoo, armed with a tranquilizer gun typically used for subduing animals. Shoo, keep quiet. We mustn't attract that monster. Moreover, what if they are deceivers? The old man warned. Should we open the door? One petite girl inquired anxiously. In this dire world, uncertainty loomed. Who knew whether those outside were friend or foe? Another girl chimed in. I saw the official announcement. It's true that some individuals have evolved and formed rescue teams. Shall we open the door, then? Yes. Our food supplies are nearly depleted. Remaining shut is tantamount to death. After a brief discussion, they cautiously opened the door. The 2 men swiftly entered, their eyes darting around with keen interest. Indeed, there are beauties here, the stout man remarked with satisfaction. Are you the rescue team from the shelter? One of the girls asked. Of course, the stout man nodded. That is wonderful. Please, take us away. Another petite girl urged. Not so fast. We can rescue you. But there is a condition, he said with a mischievous grin. What condition? The girl queried, puzzled. The stout man leered. You must first allow me some pleasure. What? The girl comprehended his meaning, her expression one of astonishment. Meanwhile, another girl had already sensed something amiss. Everyone, be cautious. Look at their attire. They are clearly not a rescue team. Are you so clever? In an instant, the short, stout man revealed a menacing demeanor, gripping the girl's neck and lifting her as one would a mere chick. The girl gasped, her feet flailing helplessly. But against his formidable strength, it was utterly futile. Observing this, the old man beside them raised his gun and fired. But the tranquil gentleman effortlessly caught the tranquilizer dart mid-flight. The reflexes of an awakened individual are far beyond those of ordinary humans. Despair filled the hearts of these few. Having narrowly escaped death at the hands of zombies and monsters, they now faced the grim prospect of dying at the hands of their own kind, enduring torment in the process. In such a scenario, death by zombies seemed preferable. At least it would be swift. Help! One of the girls screamed, willing to invite monsters upon them in a desperate bid for mutual destruction. Bang! Yet, the cultured man struck her down effortlessly. Damn it, seeking death. The stout man was also preparing to unleash his brutality. It's the end of the world. Who could possibly save you? Besides, I am an awakened one. The entire world belongs to me. Clearly, these two had transformed into ruthless tyrants. Just then, a deep voice resonated. Is it delightful to be an awakened one? Chapter 19. The main focus is consumption. Everyone turned to the source of the voice, discovering a handsome young man standing calmly at the doorway, his demeanor serene. How is there still another man? The stout man furrowed his brow. The three caretakers and the old watchman were now filled with terror, their hearts gripped by dread. For they knew that there was no one named Lin Dong in this place. He had appeared out of thin air. A collective gasp escaped their lips, chills running down their spines. Was he human or a specter? The cultured man, however, showed no sign of concern. Having taken countless lives, he was already numb to it. What's the harm in killing a man? Thus, he approached Lin Dong step by step, unaware that he was walking towards his own doom. You're dressed rather neatly. Prepare to die. The man swung his fist towards Lin Dong's jaw, and with his strength, he could easily deliver a fatal blow to an ordinary person. Yet Lin Dong remained motionless, a flicker of crimson light glinting in his eyes. Then, a peculiar scene unfolded. The man's fist seemed to pass right through Lin Dong's body. The cultured man immediately sensed something was amiss, feeling as though this individual had become ethereal. Although he stood before him, he could not make contact. Bizarre. Panic surged within him as a profound sense of unease spread in his heart. The scene before him was utterly perplexing. The others behind him were also left dumbfounded. This person was indeed extraordinary. Suddenly, Lin Dong waved his hand, and a dagger materialized, plunging directly into the man's chest. Although no blood flowed from the wound, the man's expression froze, his pupils dilated, and he succumbed to death. This was one of Lin Dong's abilities within the realm of corpses, penetrating the chest to directly assault the heart. With a flick of his wrist, he extracted the man's heart, crimson and steaming, dripping with fresh blood. The remaining onlookers, having never witnessed such a horrifying scene, were seized by terror, even the brutish. Stout man trembled in fear. As Lin Dong examined the heart, he noted the blood of the awakened was rather impure, lacking distinction from that of an ordinary person. Yet, upon reflection, something seemed amiss. According to official reports, the powers of the awakened stemmed from a core within their brains. With this thought, Lin Dong gazed at the lifeless body beneath his feet. He casually tossed the heart aside and drove the dagger into the man's forehead, cleaving it open. Inside, he discovered a round, fleshy orb, roughly the size of a thumb, brimming with pure energy and exuding a delightful fragrance. This appears promising, Lin Dong mused as he extracted the orb and tentatively tasted it. To his delight, it was delectably sweet, reminiscent of cherries enjoyed by an ordinary person. The energy coursed through his limbs like a warm stream, an exquisite sensation. Regrettably, the energy was insufficient for his needs, leaving him wanting more. His gaze then shifted to the stout man, who trembled as if hunted by a beast, nearly soiling himself in fright, and fled towards the door, exclaiming, "Oh my! A ghost! Don't kill me!" Just as he reached the threshold, Lin Dong swiftly pierced his hand into the back of the man's skull. Utilizing his corpse domain ability, he extracted the brain core through the skull. The stout man collapsed, lifeless on the ground. In mere moments, Lin Dong had dispatched two awakened individuals with ruthless efficiency. "Please, spare us," the few survivors cried, their fear reaching a fever pitch as they huddled together, pleading for mercy. Lin Dong surveyed them. The flesh of ordinary people held little significance for him, typically regarded as mere fodder. "Very well, I shall not kill you," he declared. "Really? Truly?" The survivors were taken aback, astonished by his unexpected mercy. Lin Dong nodded, "I am not a monster." Yet, at that moment, a foul wind swept through the exterior, an ominous aura permeating the air. A chilling howl echoed throughout the zoo, a mournful and frenzied wail, akin to a ghostly lament, sending shivers down the spine of all who heard it. The old night watchman's eyes widened in sheer terror. "Oh no, our voices were too loud. And we've attracted that monstrous creature. It has discovered us." "Oh." Lin Dong turned his gaze toward the outside. Through the gaps sealed with steel bars, he spotted a crimson eye, as large as a light bulb, emanating a bloodthirsty aura, straining to peer inside the room. The expressions of several survivors turned ashen. It was that mutated beast, the very one that had devoured all the animals in the zoo. It had returned to feast upon us. Boom. As they spoke, the walls of the building were struck with tremendous force. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The beast's strength was formidable. After several impacts, the reinforced steel began to bend, producing a sound that grated on the nerves. Rumble. Finally, a gaping hole was smashed open in the wall. Two menacing heads emerged before the onlookers, an enormous wolf, towering at nearly 2 meters, its bulk surpassing that of a yak. Most peculiarly, This wolf possessed 2 heads. Its 4 bulbous eyes glimmered with ferocity, and the razor-sharp fangs, each as long as a dagger, glistened ominously. Clearly, this was a mutated creature. Roar! The 2-headed wolf bellowed at the few people inside, exuding an aura of malice, tinged with a hint of arrogance. The old night watchman raised his tranquilizer gun and pulled the trigger. You all should run if you can. I, an old man, have lived long enough. Let it devour me first. Yet the double-headed wolf, with fur standing like steel needles and skin extraordinarily tough, might not even be penetrated by bullets, effortlessly deflecting the tranquilizer dart. This was disastrous. Faced with such a ferocious giant wolf, they had no room for resistance. That last strike only fueled the beast's fury. It was about to break through the shattered wall. Meanwhile, Lin Dong stood his ground, intrigued, observing the wolf's massive form, robust and streamlined, as if it possessed an insatiable appetite. As a corpse king, his primary focus was on consumption. What might the flesh of this wolf taste like? The survivors were momentarily stunned. He intended to eat wolf meat? At this moment, the giant wolf had fully entered. Standing before Lin Dong, at over 2 meters tall, its 2 heads lowered, casting a shadow over him. The immense body radiated an overwhelming pressure. Yet Lin Dong met its gaze with unwavering calm. The domain unfurled. In an instant, a crimson glow intensified in his eyes, and a blood-red realm expanded around him. Chapter 20, Childhood Memories. The domain of the corpse king enveloped the 2-headed wolf, a powerful pressure permeating the air. The giant wolf trembled, as if submerged in the depths of the ocean, overwhelmed by the immense pressure, and suddenly, its limbs gave way, kneeling with a thud. Whimpering, it emitted a mournful sound. Resembling a defeated dog, its once fierce gaze now replaced by fear. It seemed that a mere glance from Lin Dong could bring the colossal wolf to its knees. The scene before them was nothing short of astonishing. It appears that the realm of the corpse king exerts a formidable suppression over the mutated beasts. The few survivors stood in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the outcome before them. The man in front of them was extraordinarily powerful. Meanwhile, Lin Dong contemplated the 2-headed giant wolf. Did it possess 2 brain cores, or merely 1? To ascertain the truth, Lin Dong stepped forward and, with a dagger, pried open one of the wolf's heads, discovering to his astonishment that each head housed a separate brain core. Regrettably, the size of these cores was relatively small, inferior to that of the earlier awakened ones. If the awakened one's brain core could be likened to a cherry, then the 2-headed wolf's would be akin to a mere small cherry. Lin Dong consumed both brain cores. Their flavor remained delectable, and their energy was pure, invigorating his vitality slightly. He then picked up his dagger and licked the blood from its blade, finding the wolf's blood surprisingly pleasant, with an energy content far surpassing that of bovine or avian blood. Satisfied, Lin Dong waved his hand and stored the creature in his spatial storage, intending to showcase it at home. As for the few living individuals behind him, he paid them no mind, for eliminating them held little significance. Much like operating a breeding farm, they could be kept to continue the lineage or be dealt with once they awakened, at which point he could dispose of them. Lin Dong's form passed through the wall, vanishing like a specter. The onlookers behind him were left speechless, astonished that the terrifying giant wolf had been so effortlessly slain. What manner of creature was he? Upon returning home, Lin Dong found Su Xiaoro had completed the household chores for the day. Boss, your clothes are all washed and ready for you to change, she announced. You may go rest now, replied Lin Dong. However, Su Xiaoro, with a hand on the back of her neck, shook her head and said, Boss, I feel a peculiar itch in my brain. Am I about to awaken? Oh. Lin Dong scrutinized her for a moment before responding, Go wash your hair. Su Xiaoro felt a pang of disappointment as her hopes were dashed, turning to leave the room. Lin Dong indulged in a hot bath and donned his freshly laundered clothes, then tied a pristine scarf around his neck. Approaching the dining table, he picked up a knife and fork, slicing into the meat of the wolf he had just hunted. The flavor of the wolf meat was quite delightful, with a satisfying chew, reminiscent of ordinary beef jerky. The television before him still broadcasted signals from the survivors. There are monsters. The beasts have not only mutated, but some have even fused with zombies. I just captured it with a drone. Everyone, look. Lin Dong chewed thoughtfully, raising his gaze to the screen. To his astonishment, there appeared a colossal python, as thick as a barrel. Yet the most bizarre sight was that it bore the head of a zombie. Coiled around a house, it looked exceedingly terrifying. This was the result of the giant python having consumed too many zombies and merging with them. Moreover, there are numerous official shelters disseminating news of hybrid monstrosities. For instance, there exists a grotesque creature resembling a human-faced spider, colossal in size, comparable to an automobile, its body enveloped in a thick layer of fur, producing silk stronger than steel. Additionally, there are rodents the size of sows, their backs bristling with human heads, densely packed, and still howling in agony. Such horrific sights are indeed disconcerting. Lin Dong mused to himself. It is evident that the outside world remains fraught with peril, teeming with mutated beasts, where the specters of flight and slaughter play out incessantly. And one misstep could cost a life. Survivors of humanity must not only be wary of these monsters, but also guard against their own kin. In their desperate quest for sustenance or beauty, they may turn upon each other, shedding the facade of civility. However, such bloodshed and violence bear little relevance to Lin Dong, who resides comfortably within his pristine abode, attended by servants, living a life of unparalleled ease. His existence starkly contrasts with the chaos beyond the towering walls of his residence. Furthermore, 3 subordinates stand vigil outside, supported by a legion of over 1,000 lesser subordinates. Neither awakened humans nor mutated beasts dare to disturb this sanctuary lightly. Thus, Lin Dong continued to bide his time for over 10 days, consuming copious amounts of flesh, easily exceeding 100 tons. The sustenance was relentless, propelling Lin Dong's strength to remarkable heights. Presently, when his domain of corpses unfurled, its reach doubled to an impressive 20 meters, exhibiting enhanced vigor and endurance. Yet, in recent days, Lin Dong observed helicopters frequently soaring across the skies outside, indicating a surge in human activity. According to the intelligence he gathered, this uptick was due to an increase in awakened individuals engaged in widespread rescue efforts. Currently, the official shelter in Jiangbei City has burgeoned to a population of 50,000, 7,000 of whom are awakened beings. Furthermore, a ranking list of the top 100 awakened individuals has been published, numbered from 001 to 100. Arranged from the strongest to the weakest. Number 001 is the most formidable, while 100 is the least. It is crucial to note that these rankings are based on data analysis rather than practical combat experience. In addition, they release daily updates regarding the rescue teams dispatched to prevent survivors from making erroneous identifications or falling prey to those with nefarious intentions. On this particular day, as Lin Dong was watching television, he noticed that most networks were down, offering little in terms of programming. Only the radar signals from the shelter remained operational. The day's announcement regarding the rescue team stated, "We have deployed rescuers Cheng Luoyi and Sun Xiaoqiang, both awakened individuals, who are about to land in the university town. We ask nearby survivors to await their assistance." Initially indifferent, Lin Dong's attention was piqued upon hearing those names. He set down his wine glass and gazed intently at the screen, where the images of 2 individuals materialized. The first was a girl with straight black hair and blunt bangs, her skin exceptionally fair, her round, dark eyes devoid of luster, appearing eerily hollow, as if stripped of emotion. The beauty of the girl was undeniably exquisite, complemented by her expressionless visage, evoking an otherworldly allure akin to that of a lifelike mannequin. The second individual was a man, with dark skin and a gaunt face, his naturally curly hair framing strikingly asymmetrical eyes, one gazing straight ahead and the other askew, exuding an air of profound wisdom. When the man's photograph was juxtaposed with that of the girl, the disparity in their appearances was stark, akin to the contrast between heaven and earth. Yet, Lin Dong recognized both of them. His gaze was involuntarily drawn to the photographs adorning the wall, remnants of his childhood spent in the orphanage, where memories lingered. To his astonishment, both individuals appeared in those images. Among them, Cheng Luoyi left a particularly indelible impression on Lin Dong. They had often played together during their youth. However, the director eventually declared that Cheng Luoyi suffered from a mental illness and sent her to a psychiatric hospital, after which he had never seen her again. The other, Sun Xiaoqiang, also stirred some recollections. Lin Dong remembered that Sun Xiaoqiang had a congenital defect and was mentally challenged, his eyes perpetually misaligned, leading to his abandonment by his parents. Lin Dong recalled a notorious incident when Sun Xiaoqiang, at the age of 12, had owned a hamster, which fell ill, prompting him to administer rat poison to it. The photographs on the television screen profoundly stirred Lin Dong's buried memories. His childhood companions had not crossed his path for a decade, and he never anticipated that they would unite to form a rescue team. One, a mentally ill individual, and the other, a person with intellectual disabilities. Could they truly be capable of saving lives? Chapter 21. Rescue Cheng Luoyi indeed suffered from mental illness. During her time in the psychiatric hospital, she exhibited tendencies for self-harm and, upon the apocalyptic event, became one of the first awakeners, ranking as number 001 in the shelter, heralded as the strongest among them. Her awakened ability was fatal pain, which rendered her stronger the more pain her body endured, with an exceptionally high ceiling of power. Sun Xiaoqiang, on the other hand, ranked as number 002, possessing the ability Fearless Frenzy. The lower one's intelligence, the greater their audacity. Thus, Sun Xiaoqiang could enter a frenzied state, his intellect plummeting to zero while his strength surged dramatically. At that moment, Chung Loi stood in the corridor of a university classroom. Clad in a white and blue striped hospital gown, her right arm bandaged, wielding a fire axe. She roared as two zombies charged towards her, shrieking with ferocity. With a stoic expression, she swung the axe, shattering their skulls, blood splattering against the corridor walls, leaving glaring streaks. Quickly move. Behind Chung Loi were several trembling survivors. At that moment, the cacophony of chaotic footsteps and the growls of zombies echoed from around the corner of the corridor. Turning to look, they were met with a horde of zombies surging forth, a mass of bodies trampling over one another, overwhelming the entire corridor like an unstoppable tide. My goodness, so many zombies. Run. The survivors, gripped by terror, sprinted after Chung Loi. Yet, the speed of ordinary humans pales in comparison to that of the zombies, and the distance between them is rapidly diminishing. Fortunately, not far ahead lies the stairwell. If they can reach it and shut the door, they will be able to isolate themselves from the undead. Chung Loi swung her fire axe, cleaving down several zombies that obstructed her path, and swiftly sidestepped into the stairwell. The survivors behind her followed suit, one after another. However, one girl accidentally stepped into a pool of zombie blood, slipping and falling to the ground. "Ah!" she exclaimed in shock. Chung Loi glanced back and, seeing that the girl was on the verge of being engulfed by the horde, decided against intervening and instead slammed the stairwell door shut. The surroundings fell into a tense silence, punctuated only by the heavy breaths of several students. Yet, one boy's eyes widened in disbelief. "Why didn't you save Xiaoya? You just left her outside." "There was no saving her," Chung Loi replied coldly. The boy remained desperate. "Xiaoya is our classmate. She has always been kind. We must go rescue her. We can't abandon anyone so easily." Chung Loi nodded slightly, then turned back and yanked the door open. However, she seized the boy's arm and forcefully pushed him outside. Bang! She then slammed the door shut with a resounding thud. In times of apocalypse, one must first eliminate the self-righteous. Her gaze swept over the remaining survivors. Does anyone else wish to attempt a rescue? The others trembled in fear, not daring to breathe, only shaking their heads vigorously. They had come to realize that this person was not to be trifled with. "The helicopter is on the roof. Let us ascend," Chung Loi stated as she began to ascend the stairs. The stairwell was eerily quiet, devoid of zombies, with only a few corpses scattered about, already dispatched by others. It seemed there were other awakened individuals within the school. If they could rescue one, it would be a noteworthy achievement, and the refuge would reward them with an additional 2 pounds of flour. Just as they were nearing the rooftop, a young man appeared at the entrance of the final stairwell, clutching a bloodied paper cutter. He stood there, coldly observing them. "Did you kill the zombies here?" Chung Loi inquired, raising her eyes. "Yes, I did," he replied, also a student of the school, now an awakened one. "Very well," Chung Loi nodded. "Come with me to the refuge." However, the young man shook his head, a glint of madness in his eyes. "Why would I go to the refuge? There, I would be under control. Out here, I am free. Why don't you stay and join me instead?" "Jiangsu, have you lost your mind?" a girl shouted from behind. Some individuals, upon suddenly acquiring abilities, inevitably undergo a transformation in temperament. "Oh, you dare speak to me like that?" A sinister expression crossed the boy's face as he reversed his grip on the paper cutter, lunging forward with a swift motion, the blade plunging down violently. Thud. However, the paper cutter did not pierce the girl. Instead, it was intercepted by an arm wrapped in bandages. The blade embedded itself within, and blood flowed forth, staining the bandages a deep crimson, reminiscent of a blooming red flower unfurling slowly. The owner of that arm was Chung Loi, who, despite being stabbed, displayed no discernible change in expression. The boy furrowed his brow, sensing something amiss. Does this person lack the sensation of pain? At that moment, the bandages on Chung Loi's arm began to unravel, revealing the skin beneath. The boy glanced down, his eyes widening in astonishment, as if witnessing an unbelievable sight. For upon Chung Loi's arm lay an array of scars, some healed, and others newly scabbed, a shocking testament to her past acts of self-harm. "Ah, pain! How exquisite it is!" Chung Loi's lips curled into a slight smile, activating her ability, Deadly Pain. She then forcefully pushed the boy's chin, her immense strength causing his head to tilt back. Crack! The boy's neck snapped, and he collapsed to the ground. As Chung Loi led the survivor to the rooftop, a helicopter awaited in the distance, alongside a gaunt figure with their back turned to them. This individual was Sun Xiaoqiang, who strangely held a zombie in his grasp. Dong Yao. "This is Dong Air, please respond," Sun Xiaoqiang said, stretching his collar while speaking into the walkie-talkie. "Hey, what are you doing?" Chung Loi inquired from behind him. Sun Xiaoqiang, taken aback, turned to reveal his signature intelligent gaze. "I've rescued everyone. I wanted to check on your situation. Have you encountered any trouble?" Is that a person you rescued? Cheng Luai retorted, casting a sidelong glance. Only then did Sun Xiaoqiang realize he was dragging a zombie, which was gnawing at his arm. Huh. It was a person just a moment ago. When did it mutate? My apologies. He swung his fist, striking the zombie in the face with such force that it was sent tumbling off the building. Meanwhile, Lin Dong was comfortably watching television at home, never anticipating that he would see the name of a childhood companion on the rescue team roster. Driven by curiosity and with nothing else to occupy his time, Lin Dong retrieved his phone and logged onto the shelter's official website, seeking more information about the two. Indeed, he found their photographs on the rescue team list, accompanied by brief descriptions resembling personal signatures. Under Cheng Luoi's photo was written, I, a gentle girl, fear pain. Sun Xiaoqiang's read, I, a handsome boy, possess unmatched intelligence and bravery. Chapter 22, The Zombie Tide. Had it not been for Sun Xiaoqiang's description, Lin Dong might have almost believed it. Not only is there information about rescue teams, but also sections for calls for help, mutual assistance, and communication. Many individuals in the shelters vent their frustrations, lamenting their hunger and pleading for food, offering to pay in kind. I am a professional model, they exclaim. I wish I could help you, but I too am in dire straits. One suggests, if it comes to it, I could spare some milk. To this, another retorts, is that even real milk? A chuckle follows as someone recounts their experience of digging a foundation, rewarded by the shelter with a quarter of a cup of instant noodles, far too much to consume. They declare, having gulped it down without even adding water, highlighting the absurdity of waste. It is evident that supplies within the shelter are exceedingly scarce. Yet the population itself represents productivity, which drives their efforts to rescue survivors. Among the discussions, a report from Tech Corporation is circulated. According to our research, it states, the heads of advanced zombies can produce brain cores, which awakened humans can absorb to rapidly enhance their strength. Therefore, our company is currently capturing the Zombie King, designating this as the Hunter King operation. Tech Corporation, having previously launched a zombie extermination plan, has now embarked on this audacious new endeavor. As Lin Dong pondered this, he was suddenly interrupted by a rough, mournful wailing from outside. Why is he crying? Judging by the sound, it was not the female zombie known as Xiao Ba, but the formidable figure of Tank. Lin Dong approached the door and opened it, revealing a muscular silhouette. Tank stood there, his physique bulging with muscle. Yet his face bore dark marks, reminiscent of fire burns. His body was riddled with bullet wounds that, despite his robust constitution, had healed sufficiently without serious consequence. You, Tank cried, displaying basic emotions due to his evolution, resembling a 200-pound child in distress. His sobs conveyed a singular message. Humans are bullying me. Lin Dong inquired, what happened? Tank gestured animatedly, akin to a child seeking parental intervention, yet his current intellect hindered him from articulating the situation clearly. At that moment, the Dr. Zombie emerged from behind him. The humans have taken over the prison. They wish to hunt us. Among them are those who can condense crystal cores and manipulate flames. Oh, Lin Dong nodded, grasping the situation. Once the brain cores of awakened humans evolve, they grant powers. And it was evident that one among them was a fire-based psychic. What does a crystal core taste like? Having sampled mutated beast meat and brain cores, both delightful in flavor, he had yet to experience a crystal core. However, it was reasonable to assume that the crystal core would surpass the brain core in potency. Having secluded himself at home for half a month, Lin Dong felt it was time to venture out. Thus, he signaled to his subordinates to prepare for a hunt. Roar. Tank ceased his weeping, releasing a fierce roar. The roar, akin to a catalyst, ignited a chain reaction, awakening thousands of nearby zombies, their howls echoing incessantly. Lin Dong made his way onto the chaotic streets, trailed by three subordinates, Tank, Xiao Ba, and Doctor. Yet behind these three, a menacing horde of zombies amassed, forming a considerable tide. With their formidable strength, this group could easily dominate in this apocalyptic nightmare. The mutated rats and snakes along the street, witnessing the ferocious swarm, shrieked and fled in terror. All forces attack. With Lin Dong's command, the horde unleashed a thunderous roar and surged forward, racing towards the prison. Inside the prison at that moment, over 100 guards were stationed, armed and donned in standardized combat uniforms, the very personnel from Tech Corporation. Utilizing the prison's towering walls and watchtowers, ordinary zombies stood no chance of breaching their defenses, allowing the guards to remain quite at ease. In one of the rooms, a young man lounged on the sofa, attended by two alluring women who catered to his every whim. This young man was Zhang Xiaoyuan, a fire element ability user. For him, acquiring women in this dystopian reality was effortless. A mere offering of 2 pieces of bread sufficed. Before the apocalypse, Zhang Xiaoyuan was merely a 996 corporate worker. Now, as an awakened being, he had been invited by Tech Corporation enjoying a life of luxury and comfort. Zhang Xiaoyuan couldn't help but marvel at his circumstances. At this stage, few awakened beings could gather crystal cores. After slaying high-level zombies and absorbing their brain cores, he had undoubtedly risen to the ranks of the strong within the human faction. He pondered the necessity of hunting more zombie kings to further evolve. After all, wasn't he akin to a protagonist in a post-apocalyptic novel? In this world of abundance, those who once dismissed him now bowed at his feet, obediently serving him, a true rags-to-riches tale. Just then, a person rushed in, breathless. "Brother Zhang, our drone has captured footage of a horde approaching this way." A horde? Zhang Xiaoyuan's expression remained unchanged, not betraying fear. Instead, he considered the prospect that if a horde was indeed present, it would likely be guided by a zombie king. An opportunity to hunt and acquire more brain cores. Let us go outside and take a look. Soon, Zhang Xiaoyuan ascended the watchtower atop the high wall, peering into the distance. Indeed, he beheld a dark mass on the street, countless zombies racing forward, their roars resonating. "Quite formidable, aren't they? Once they enter our attack range, we shall open fire." "Understood," replied a nearby guard. As the zombie army drew closer, a single command rang out, and the firing points atop the high wall erupted in a barrage of gunfire, bullets cascading like rain, forming a metallic tempest. However, many of Lin Dong's subordinates had already undergone evolution, exhibiting extraordinary physiques and possessing healing abilities. Sustaining a few shots posed little issue for them. They would rise again, continuing their relentless charge. In no time, the horde reached the base of the high wall, beginning to construct a wall of bodies. Xiaoba grinned mysteriously, her leaping ability remarkably enhanced. With a powerful spring, she leaped atop a zombie and soared directly over the high wall. In a swift motion, she clawed open the abdomen of a guard. Meanwhile, Tank lifted a massive boulder and, akin to a discus thrower, spun around several times before hurling the stone upward. With a thunderous crash, the boulder shattered the watchtower, causing its occupants to tumble from the walls. Something felt amiss to Zhang Xiaoyuan as he sensed a disquieting unease. These zombies were unlike any he had encountered before. His suspicions were confirmed when a crossbow bolt whizzed by, piercing the skull of a guard beside him. What the? Only then did Zhang Xiaoyuan grasp the gravity of the situation. Chapter 23, The Siege of the Prison. This was a horde of highly evolved zombies, possessing an uncanny ability to collaborate, displaying remarkable intelligence. He also observed that Tank, fierce and relentless, was engaged in a frenzied spree of slaughter. Zhang had previously encountered Tank and had managed to drive him away. Evidently, he had returned for vengeance. These creatures could harbor grudges? Zhang furrowed his brow in concern. "Brother Yuan, look over there," exclaimed a guard beside him, his eyes wide with astonishment. Amid the tide of corpses stood a young man in a pristine white shirt, strikingly clean amidst the surrounding grotesque zombies. His expression was impassive, coldly observing the chaos around him. Is he human or a ghost? Zhang Xiaoyuan was equally taken aback. In this post-apocalyptic world, it was rare for a human to remain so unblemished. The young man's presence seemed almost surreal. To describe it with a phrase, his background was too contrived. "Quick, aim and fire at him," Zhang Xiaoyuan commanded immediately. The nearby guards swiftly redirected their weapons, unleashing a torrent of bullets. Yet, Lin Dong stood motionless, and as a flash of crimson light flickered in his eyes, the bullets passed right through him, striking the ground behind. What the hell? Zhang Xiaoyuan was utterly astonished. The scene before him was exceedingly bizarre. As the guards on the wall continued to fall, their firepower dwindled. The zombies in the corner pressed closer together, forming a pyramid, with those atop climbing the wall. They howled with grotesque faces, shrieking and lunging at anyone in sight. A terrifying sight indeed. Several guards were knocked to the ground, subjected to frenzied feasting. The remaining guards, gripped by fear, found themselves in disarray. Seeing the outer wall on the brink of collapse, Zhang Xiaoyuan urgently commanded, "Fall back. Retreat to the safe house." The guards, already contemplating their escape, swiftly turned to flee, occasionally firing back to impede the advancing zombies. However, Xiaoba was the fastest. Her claws stained crimson with blood. She reveled in the carnage. Witnessing the humans flee only intensified her predatory instincts, and with graceful strides, she pursued, leaving behind a blur of afterimages. In the briefest of moments, 5 or 6 humans fell to the ground. This was an agile necromancer. Zhang Xiaoyuan made a swift judgment, igniting flames in both hands, with a searing heat enveloping him as he unleashed his fire-based abilities. If he did not act to impede her, his subordinates would not escape unscathed. With a flick of his wrist, 2 fireballs hurtled toward Xiaoba. Xiaoba reacted with remarkable swiftness, leaping back to evade the attack. Boom, boom. The fireballs erupted, forming a formidable wall of flames. Under the cover of this fiery barrier, The guards retreated into the structures behind them. Out of the corner of his eye, Zhang Xiaoyuan noticed Lin Dong's silhouette steadily advancing through the tide of corpses. Zhang Xiaoyuan dared not linger for long. He hastily jumped down from the high wall and sought refuge within the building, sensing an unusual aura emanating from Lin Dong, unable to ascertain the nature of his abilities. With the outer walls breached, Lin Dong approached the building at a leisurely pace. He refrained from immediate action, curious to gauge the strength of the awakened humans. Although his domain as a necromancer was formidable, it could only be maintained for 5 minutes at full power. Acting recklessly might result in an untidy situation. After a brief skirmish, 2/3 of the more than 100 guards within the prison had perished, leaving fewer than 40 remaining. In stark contrast, Lin Dong suffered minimal losses as he led his horde of zombies forward. The tank, following closely behind, wore a grotesque grin reminiscent of a child, expressing a sense of satisfaction. Finally, vengeance was theirs. Let them bully me no more. Inside the prison, Zhang Xiaoyuan and his companions constructed a safe haven, crafted entirely from 10-centimeter thick alloy, including the roof and floor, with no blind spots, rendering it remarkably sturdy. Only the front wall bore several fist-sized openings, serving as firing ports for shooting outward and facilitating ventilation. Once they had retreated into the safe house, a collective sigh of relief escaped their lips. These zombies were ferocious. Indeed, they were unlike any horde encountered before. You wouldn't believe it, but I nearly met my end at the hands of a zombie wielding a cleaver. These creatures have evolved far too rapidly. A few guards expressed their astonishment. However, Lin Dong's vanguard had already tracked them down. Their faces twisted in rage as they clawed at the walls, their roars echoing incessantly. Yet, the alloy walls were too robust for the zombies to breach. Use the satellite phone to contact headquarters and request assistance. While we are safe for now, we cannot allow ourselves to be trapped here by the zombies, Zhang Xiaoyuan commanded. Understood, one of the guards promptly replied. Boom, boom. At that moment, the tank crashed through several walls, barreling directly toward the safe house. Witnessing his enemies take refuge within their stronghold, the tank felt a sense of impatience and swung its massive fists, striking multiple blows. Bang, bang, bang. The safe house trembled under the assault, but the alloy walls remained impenetrable. Huh, you oversized fool, you can't get in, can you? Zhang Xiaoyuan harbored no concerns. The construction of this safe house was intended to safeguard against powerful, brute-like zombie kings or formidable mutated creatures. The tank seethed with rage, roaring incessantly, damn humans. Zhang Xiaoyuan surmised that with the tank's limited intelligence, it could not possibly orchestrate such a well-trained horde of zombies. The true mastermind must be someone else, the impeccably clean young man. As these thoughts occupied his mind, an unexpected silence fell over the outside world. All the zombies suddenly ceased their incessant moaning, akin to a rowdy classroom quieting down upon the entrance of a stern teacher. What is happening? Why have they all gone silent? The peculiar behavior of the zombies left the observers astounded. It was a sight unseen since the apocalypse began. The zombies stood in an orderly manner, and astonishingly, they instinctively parted to create a pathway. This left the onlookers even more bewildered, for they had never encountered such behavior from the undead. Soon after, a young figure emerged from the distance, flanked on either side by Xiao Ba and the Dr. Zombie. Their hierarchy unmistakable. Brother, these zombies are truly bizarre. One subordinate exclaimed, visibly shaken. Zhang Xiaoyuan's gaze remained fixated, equally astonished. It's all right, they cannot breach our defenses. We shall await rescue, he reassured, as his subordinates nodded, feeling somewhat relieved. Given the robustness of the safe house, even a missile strike would not compromise its integrity, alleviating any fears of a zombie incursion. Bah, filthy zombies, come in and bite me, will you? Yes, put on a show. You think you're so formidable. One of the guards, burdened by the weight of their traumatic experiences and having witnessed the gruesome deaths of comrades, sought to vent their frustrations, even firing a burst of rounds toward the exit. Yet, amidst the flare of gunfire, Lin Dong's approaching figure abruptly vanished. Stop, you fools. Zhang Xiaoyuan swiftly halted his subordinates, for their actions were futile and merely wasted ammunition. Moreover, he had sensed Lin Dong's disappearance, as if he had evaporated into thin air. A profound unease enveloped him, giving rise to an eerie sensation. Where could he have gone? However, in the next moment, the tall figure reappeared, yet this time, Lin Dong had inexplicably entered the building. What the hell? The crowd gaped in disbelief, even rubbing their eyes to confirm they were not mistaken. How did he get in? What on earth is happening? Damn it, this is madness. They recoiled in terror, akin to startled cats. Overwhelmed by fear, one individual instinctively raised their weapon, ready to pull the trigger. As Lin Dong unleashed the domain of the Corpse King, an overwhelming sense of oppression enveloped the surroundings. causing everyone to feel as though they were burdened by an immense weight, rendering their bodies rigid in place. Zhang Xiaoyuan, being an awakened, possessed heightened sensitivity. He perceived an endless sea of blood surging behind Lin Dong, encircling them all. Under the immense pressure, flames ignited spontaneously from his hands. As an awakened who had condensed a core, his physique far surpassed that of an ordinary person, allowing him to barely move within the Corpse King's domain. Die! He gritted his teeth, channeling all his strength into a fiery punch aimed directly at Lin Dong. Lin Dong's gaze fixated on him. It was his first encounter in battle with an awakened, and he lacked experience. Moreover, his own understanding of his strength was rather vague. He was unsure of just how formidable he truly was. Perhaps it was time to test it. Lin Dong contemplated. However, despite the notion of experimentation, he knew he could not afford to underestimate the opponent before him, a being who had condensed a core. Thus, he too exerted his full power and launched a punch in return. Bang! A muffled thud resonated as their fists collided. The flames around Zhang Xiaoyuan extinguished, and his arms shattered like fragile foam in an instant. His body was struck by a tremendous force, akin to being hit by a train, sending him crashing backward against the alloy wall. The impact was more devastating than falling from the 30th floor, resulting in a gruesome demise. Lin Dong raised an eyebrow. Was he really dead? It seemed that even an awakened who had condensed a core was not all that impressive. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiaoyuan's subordinates stood in stunned disbelief. Moments ago, they had prayed for Zhang Xiaoyuan's salvation, yet they could hardly fathom that in the span of a single punch, he had perished. The opponent was far too powerful. He was not a mere specter, but a true demon. The apocalypse had indeed arrived. A sense of despair washed over the guards, as they found themselves immobilized under the Corpse King's oppressive domain. Some with weaker wills had already succumbed to unconsciousness. Lin Dong stepped forward and extracted a core from Zhang Xiaoyuan's shattered skull. Unlike the brain cores, this crystal core was entirely transparent, resembling the size of a pigeon egg and emanating a richer fragrance. The energy contained within it far exceeded that of a brain core. It was akin to a delectable morsel. Lin Dong swallowed the crystal core, which melted in his mouth, delightfully sweet and accompanied by a warm current coursing through his limbs. The pure energy was rapidly absorbed, nourishing his physique. Lin Dong felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The energy from this single core was equivalent to at least 10 brain cores. He retrieved a tissue, diligently wiping his hands, before turning to exit. As he opened the security door, he announced, "Dinner is served." Instantly, the horde of zombies erupted in excited roars, surging into the safe house to feast upon the guards. Their desperate screams echoing in a cacophony of horror. Yet tranquility was swiftly restored. A hunt concluded. The prison recently seized by the tech company fell once more into desolation. Zombies roamed within, rendering the landscape bleak. Occasionally, dark crows descended, cawing as they feasted upon the decaying flesh of the undead. At this moment, Lin Dong led the tide of corpses back to their lair. In keeping with his routine, Lin Dong first indulged in a bath and changed into clean attire. Perhaps due to the consumption of the crystal core, he felt no pangs of hunger. Thus, he poured himself a goblet of fresh blood and drank leisurely. His demeanor remarkably relaxed, as if the fearsome zombie king had transformed into the amiable boy next door. "Boss, where have you been?" inquired Su Xiaoro, who was mopping the floor nearby. After all, Lin Dong was her only companion for conversation. The monotony of her existence was overwhelming. Without turning his head, Lin Dong replied, "Nothing much, just went out for a meal." Su Xiaoro paused, her expression momentarily stunned. In a post-apocalyptic world, what could possibly constitute a meal? With her sharp intellect, she quickly deduced the truth. Perhaps it was best to refrain from further dialogue, as they shared no common ground. After each hunt, Lin Dong would remain hidden in his lair for several days, indifferent to the chaos and peril that ensued outside. He continued to absorb energy daily, evolving unceasingly. Since the onset of the apocalypse, he had never lacked for flesh and blood, which blurred his perception of his own strength. Initially, he intended to test his prowess against Zhang Xiaoyuan, only to find he was too weak, perishing with a single blow. Is there no opponent of greater strength? However, Lin Dong's slaying of Zhang Xiaoyuan and the subsequent downfall of the prison ignited a tremendous uproar online. Both the official shelters and the tech company took a keen interest in the matter. As soon as the prison's collapse was announced on the tech company's website, a multitude of comments ensued. "This tech company is failing. Didn't they previously boast about the Hunter King operation? Clearly, that was a failure. Zhang Xiaoyuan was an awakened one with a crystallized core, ranking among the top 10 in our official shelter, wasn't he? Indeed. It's terrifying that he was killed without even receiving rescue. Oh my, has such a formidable zombie king already evolved? Will this zombie king attack our shelter?" The discussions were fervent. Despite the apocalypse, there were still 3,000 comments, as the internet lay in ruins. and the only signals reaching survivors were from the official shelter's website and the tech company's site. In response to this incident, the tech company expressed its indignation and promptly released a statement. Concerning the prison's collapse, our company shall not relent. We have uncovered leads regarding the zombie king responsible for Zhang Xiaoyuan's death and will soon ascertain the location of its lair. We shall dispatch a squad of awakeners, accompanied by the ultimate killing machine, the hunter, to eradicate all the zombies from their lair. The Hunt King operation continues. Chapter 25. Assassination. Shall we continue? Lin Dong mused, a subtle smile gracing his lips, convinced that the notion of further hunting human awakeners to acquire crystal cores for energy replenishment was indeed a splendid idea. After all, he had not yet had his fill of cherries. Moreover, Lin Dong preferred the solitude of his nest, disliking disturbances. The most effective way to ensure that others did not encroach upon his peace was to venture out and eliminate them all. Thus, Lin Dong issued a command to Xiaoba, instructing her to seek out the whereabouts of the human awakeners. With her impressive speed, she was an adept and nimble scout. Xiaoba chuckled mischievously as she swiftly departed the lair, vanishing around a distant corner. As night fell, darkness enveloped the earth. The power outage in Jiangbei City left the streets shrouded in utter blackness, devoid of light from street lamps. In that inky blackness, the chilling roars of zombies and the growls of mutated creatures echoed, a ceaseless display of bloody carnage. Lin Dong stood before the window of his home, gazing outward. The zombies possessed remarkable night vision, allowing them to perceive the intricate details of the streets even from the 20th floor. Just then, a ghostly figure rushed into the building. It was Xiaoba returning. Your Majesty, I have located a group of humans. They are holed up in the DFA supermarket, guarding a warehouse. And among them are over a dozen awakeners clad in uniforms identical to those worn by the individuals we encountered today, Xiaoba reported. With her current intellect comparable to that of a 10-year-old child, she was capable of articulating even moderately complex matters clearly. Over a dozen awakeners donning the same uniform, Lin Dong needed no further contemplation to deduce that they were from tech company. In this apocalyptic world, no other faction would adopt a unified attire. They were likely hoarding substantial resources in the supermarket warehouse, striving to transport them back amidst the challenges of this dire reality. Where not everyone possessed storage capabilities. Let us go take a look, Lin Dong stated succinctly. Xiaoba's excitement surged, her grin stretching from ear to ear, revealing an expression of delight. The night was indeed the prime time for zombie hunting. However, this occasion was unlike the previous ones. The horde of zombies moved silently, trailing Lin Dong like phantoms merging with the darkness. Inside the DFA supermarket, there were over 200 humans, more than 100 of whom were ordinary survivors, while the remainder comprised employees of tech company. Among them, there were 12 awakeners. The large warehouse housed resources valued in the millions, critical for the sustenance of thousands, underscoring its immense importance and the necessity for flawless execution. How long will it take to transport all these supplies back? With just over 200 of us, we'll be exhausted just from moving the goods, lamented a young sentry. Beside him, someone took a puff of smoke, exhaling clouds of vapor. What does it matter? We'll wait for someone from above to arrive. After all, we have food and drink, cigarettes and liquor, so we can endure this vigil. The crucial point is not to return to the company. Outside, there's an incessant sense of insecurity. The youth felt a profound unease within. The person beside him chuckled heartily. Surely you're not worried about zombies breaking in? We have 12 awakened ones here. If zombies enter, they're merely courting death. A sigh escaped the youth's lips. Let us hope so. As the night deepened, a sense of weariness began to creep in. Nango, pass me a cigarette as well. To perk me up. What they remained oblivious to was that the supermarket's perimeter was besieged by thousands of zombies, standing silently like wooden stakes, their eyes growing increasingly ferocious, resembling demons lurking in the shadows. At Lin Dong's command, they would charge heedlessly into battle, undeterred by the prospect of death. With so many awakened ones, Lin Dong sensed the presence of humans inside and suddenly realized that under the current circumstances, a direct assault would be ill-advised. He was confident in his own capabilities, but the critical concern lay with his subordinates, who could suffer heavy losses. The ones he had brought along were elite zombies, capable of understanding commands and obeying orders. Thus, Lin Dong decided to take the initiative himself, seeking an opportunity to quietly eliminate a few awakened ones before launching a full-scale assault. He promptly instructed his subordinates to remain on standby and ventured forth alone, his figure melding into the darkness, gradually disappearing from sight. Utilizing his zombie domain ability, Lin Dong effortlessly passed through the walls and entered the supermarket's interior. He moved silently, akin to a ghost, ever cautious. Lin Dong surveyed his surroundings. After all, there were 12 awakened ones present. He activated his zombie king domain to its fullest extent, which could only last for 5 minutes. Should he be bogged down by a war of attrition, complications could arise. As he sensed the human presence, he advanced slowly, though shrouded in darkness. The surroundings were vividly clear. The first floor of the supermarket was dedicated to gold and silver jewelry, diamonds, and precious stones. In this apocalyptic world, such items were utterly useless, left untouched on display. Continuing forward, Lin Dong arrived at the main hall on the first floor. Here, the sounds of human breathing were more pronounced. Even the faintest snores could be heard. A quick glance revealed dozens of people sleeping on the ground. Most were already fast asleep. However, some remained awake, engrossed in their phones, the dim glow illuminating a balding face. With all his hair gone, he was still up late? In such large supermarkets, generators were typically available, making it reasonable for them to play on their phones. Lin Dong chose not to disturb them, as they were merely ordinary survivors. Moreover, he had already locked onto his target, situated not far away in a small room. There, he sensed 3 presences, 1 awakened individual and 2 women. Lin Dong stealthily approached, using his zombie domain ability to pass through the wall. This room, originally a shop, has been transformed into a bedroom with the addition of a bed, permeated by a lewd atmosphere. Upon the bed lies a young man and 2 women, their bodies completely bare. It is needless to speculate upon the events that transpired. In this apocalyptic world, the awakened have become a coveted prize, with countless women eagerly seeking their embrace. Confronted daily by fierce monsters, these women carry immense psychological burdens, uncertain of when their lives may be extinguished, leading them to regard their chastity with indifference and embrace indulgence. Lin Dong drew a dagger and thrust it into the young man's forehead. To avoid making a sound, he utilized his corpse domain ability, penetrating the skull to disrupt the brain, and with a deft motion, extracted a brain essence. Clearly, this awakened individual was of a lower tier, having yet to condense a crystal core. Lin Dong, not one to be picky, consumed it whole, still tasting like cherries. The 2 women remained deeply asleep, showing no signs of disturbance, evidently exhausted from prior exertions. Should they awaken to find themselves beside a corpse, fear would surely grip them. Displaying a sense of tenderness, Lin Dong, wishing to spare them undue fright, plunged his dagger into their hearts, one by one. Chapter 26, Midnight Slaughter. Lin Dong continued to employ his corpse domain ability, launching internal assaults to prevent blood from spilling and the scent of gore from alerting other awakened individuals, whose keen senses could easily detect it. After dispatching these 3, Lin Dong proceeded to the adjacent room, where a female awakened lay in a deep slumber. He repeated his method, extracting her brain essence as well. Thus, Lin Dong eliminated 5 awakened beings in succession, absorbing their brain essences. This sensation suddenly evoked memories of his childhood spent in an orphanage, where a cherry tree stood in the backyard. Each time cherries ripened, he and Chung Loi, along with a group of children, would gather to pick and indulge in the fruit. Even after all these years, the memory remained vivid, as if it had transpired yesterday, an echo of his lost childhood. Surprisingly, in such a grim context, it brought forth nostalgic reflections. With these cherished memories in mind, Lin Dong resolved to continue his grim task. However, upon crossing through a wall, he found himself in an expansive warehouse filled with a plethora of supplies: oil, salt, rice, soy sauce, tea, beverages, instant noodles, sausages, bread. Everything one might find in a supermarket was present. Lin Dong, unreserved, swept it all into his storage space with a wave of his hand. Advancing further, he encountered yet another large warehouse, this one stocked with fresh meats, frozen shrimp, and crabs, all preserved perfectly due to backup generators. With another gesture, he collected all of it. Continuing onward, he discovered yet another warehouse of similar size, containing a vast array of household appliances, brooms, mops, and detergents. Only the vegetable storage area showed signs of extensive decay, yet Lin Dong remained unconcerned, because he is a carnivore. Just at that moment, the 2 sentinels outside had begun to sense that something was amiss. "Nan, it's already past 2 o'clock. Why hasn't T. Goshen come to relieve us?" "I don't know," the middle-aged man replied, equally puzzled. Could he have exhausted himself into a state of utter fatigue last night? "I shall go check on him. Perhaps he is deliberately shirking his duty." Wishing to linger a while longer, the young man's expression was one of indignation. He strode directly to the first room and knocked vigorously on the door. "Goshen, rise and take your shift. Hurry up. Hey, are you even listening? Don't feign sleep." Yet, no matter how he pounded, there was no response from within. The youth's unease intensified. In a moment of urgency, he forced the door open. As he entered and glanced toward the bed, he was met with a shocking sight. 1 man and 2 women lay there, their skin an eerie pallor, devoid of any color. They appeared to be lifeless. "What the hell? Something's wrong. Someone come quickly," the youth exclaimed, his voice trembling and tinged with panic, reverberating through the hall, and shattering the night's stillness. Countless individuals stirred from their slumber, bleary-eyed and rubbing their eyes as they approached. What is going on? What happened? Could it be that zombies have breached our defenses? A throng of survivors gathered, murmuring amongst themselves. Yet, amidst the crowd stood a tall young man, his expression inscrutable, observing the unfolding chaos with indifference. Among the previous sentinels was Nan, whose name was Lin Nan, a crystallized core awakener and the de facto leader here. Xiao Lu, what on earth has transpired? Nan, Goxing is dead, the youth replied hastily. What? Lin Nan peered into the room, his brow furrowing immediately. The survivors behind him began to murmur in concern. How did he die? Did he get too excited and slip up? Surely not. The two women have perished as well. Could they have contracted some infectious disease? Lin Nan's frown deepened. With his acute perception, he sensed that Goxing's energy was completely drained, indicating that his brain core had been extracted. Yet, there were no visible wounds on his body. This is impossible. His head is intact, yet the brain core is missing. What about the individuals in the adjacent rooms? Let us summon them for questioning. I don't know, Xiao Lu replied, looking bewildered. Lin Nan looked ahead and noticed that the doors to 4 consecutive rooms remained tightly shut, causing his heart to sink. Awakeners possess keen senses. There was no way they wouldn't have heard such a commotion. Unless bang, 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 bang. Lin Nan forcefully opened the 4 doors in succession. Inside, as expected, lay a series of cold corpses. Hiss! Everyone gasped in horror. They were all dead. At that moment, a girl rushed over from the direction of the warehouse. Her delicate face etched with urgency. Brother Nan, the supplies in the warehouse are completely gone. What? Lin Nan felt a wave of darkness wash over him, nearly fainting. He hurried to the entrance of several large warehouses, only to find that the once-filled storage spaces were now utterly empty. This must be an illusion. I must be under some form of mental control. Lin Nan shook his head repeatedly, struggling to comprehend the stark reality before him. Indeed, certain awakened individuals or mutated creatures possess the ability to manipulate minds. Yet, no matter how hard he focused, he could not deny the truth that lay before his eyes. This was reality, not some figment of imagination. How could this be possible? Lin Nan's expression darkened to an almost palpable level of despair. The others remained silent. 100 individuals enveloped in an eerie stillness, not a single voice daring to break the quiet. Of the original 12 awakened beings, 5 had inexplicably perished, leaving only 7 behind. Most concerning was the complete absence of supplies. How could they possibly survive now? Something must have infiltrated here. Lin Nan analyzed coolly. The girl beside him inquired, Brother Nan, what sort of power could stealthily eliminate 5 awakened beings and abscond with resources worth millions? I have no idea, Lin Nan replied, furrowing his brow as he scanned the surroundings. But it's possible that the assailant has not yet left. They could be lurking somewhere within this building. A wave of fear washed over the crowd. The entire supermarket stood 6 stories tall, and they dared not turn on the lights. Fearing the attention of zombies or powerful mutated beasts, they only utilized dim lighting, which illuminated a radius of no more than 20 meters, leaving everything beyond cloaked in darkness. The thought that a creature capable of slaying 5 awakened individuals could be hiding in that shadowy abyss filled them with a profound sense of unease. People glanced around anxiously, fearful of any lurking monstrosities. Yet, amidst the crowd stood Lin Dong, who observed the remaining 7 awakened beings. Among them, 5 exuded a vigorous aura, likely having condensed their cores, their abilities uncertain. For now, he chose not to rush into an attack. There was amusement to be found in toying with them. In light of these events, all the survivors wore expressions of despair, their minds heavy with negativity. Their concerns shifted from the loss of 5 awakened ones to the pressing issues of food and the lurking threat in the darkness. There's no food left. What will we do now? Xiaoxua, I gave you a piece of chocolate yesterday. You should return it to me. Brother Nan, will you take us back to the tech company? Perhaps we can request some supplies for reinforcement. Voices clamored in confusion. Lina nodded. I will consider it. Although he spoke with assurance, his heart was troubled, contemplating the loss of millions in supplies and the deaths of 5 individuals. Alongside the prospect of requesting reinforcements from the company, which certainly would not bode well for him. Should the company place the blame upon us, we might very well become subjects of their live experimentation. The most prudent course of action now is to withhold information from the company, keeping them in the dark while we endeavor to locate that monstrous entity and reclaim our resources. Chapter 27, merged with darkness in an instant. 7 awakened individuals convened to deliberate on a strategy. Within the shadows, Lin Nan was the first to voice his thoughts. In my opinion, we cannot report this to the company. We must retrieve our lost materials. The other 6 nodded in agreement, fully aware of the stakes involved. Should the higher-ups of the company become privy to this information, the consequences would be dire. However, a hesitant young man interjected, Brother Nan, We currently have no leads at all. How do we even begin our search? We will undoubtedly uncover a clue, Lin Dong asserted. With such a substantial amount of resources stolen, it is impossible that there are no traces left behind. Moreover, that creature is likely still within the marketplace. We can enlist the help of the survivors to aid in our search. I refuse to believe we cannot find it. Survivors? They are nearly paralyzed with fear. Who would have the courage to confront a monster? They certainly will not agree to this, Xiao Lu remarked. Lin Dong's brow furrowed in determination. Whether they agree or not, they must comply. Our company is not a sanctuary. We are not rescuing them merely for the sake of goodwill. In this apocalyptic era, only those of value deserve to persist. As his words hung heavily in the air, a profound silence enveloped the group. No one dared to speak further. The 6 awakened individuals comprehended his intent. Even if it meant using survivors as expendable pawns, the creature must be found. After all, we are talking about resources worth billions. In this apocalypse, such wealth far outweighs the worth of a few lives. Once their discussion concluded, Lin Dong returned to address the survivors. Listen closely, everyone. We have just conferred and determined that, with our resources lost, we cannot afford to remain idle. In times of crisis, we must unite and recover what is rightfully ours. What? The murmurs that had previously filled the air ceased abruptly. Go searching for resources? Are you serious? It's pitch black, and there may still be monsters lurking in the marketplace. Whoever wishes to go may do so. I, for one, will not. Exactly. 5 awakened ones have already been killed. We are merely ordinary people, and encountering a monster means a certain death. Dealing with the creature is the responsibility of the awakened, not ours, as we have not awakened. Listening to the discourse, Lin Dong's expression darkened, his anger igniting within him. He spoke with deliberate intensity. You will go whether you wish to or not. I have no obligation to protect you. If you do not intend to contribute and simply wish to reap the benefits, I shall cast you outside the marketplace. A gasp of shock rippled through the crowd. His demeanor was far from jest. The overwhelming presence of the awakened instilled a deep sense of trepidation, leaving no room for dissent. Nevertheless, some among them were inclined to support him. Our survival thus far has depended on the supplies from the warehouse. We have consumed much from within. It is only right that we search. Indeed, we are many. What is there to fear? What if that creature's abilities are merely peculiar and it possesses little combat strength? Indeed, it is reasonable to assume that there must be weaknesses. One cannot be proficient in all aspects. The crowd murmured amongst themselves. Observing a spark of determination among the people, Lin Dong decided to strike them with a firm hand, followed by a sweet promise. I, Lin Dong, assure you that whoever can procure supplies or provide valuable leads will be generously rewarded with enough food to last a year by Take Corporation. The crowd gasped in astonishment. A year's worth of food? In this apocalyptic era, even those who guarded the warehouses had to live frugally, subsisting on a fixed ration daily to stave off starvation. The prospect of a year's sustenance was indeed invaluable. Several robust men suddenly appeared invigorated, exclaiming, "Let us go. I wish to see where the monster lurks." Yes, we shall seek him out. Stealthily, we must rely on ambush tactics. The crowd lit their flashlights and illuminated their phones, intertwining countless beams of light that dispelled the surrounding darkness. They formed small groups and began to disperse in search of the creature. Amidst the throng, Lin Dong fixated on the 7 awakened individuals, plotting to find an opportunity to eliminate them. He retreated into the inky shadows. The mall was immense, typically accommodating thousands of customers. The 200 survivors appeared sparse, becoming increasingly scattered as some opted to hide away, giving in to despair. Yet, Lin Dong's attention was not on them. They were not worth his effort. The 7 awakened ones remained vigilant, steadfastly staying together without a moment's separation. Brother Nan, why do I always feel as though someone is following us? A female awakened one furrowed her brow, glancing back into the impenetrable darkness behind them, finding nothing. Lin Dong offered reassurance. Do not frighten yourself. You are merely too tense. Indeed, Brother Nan is right. Xiao Lu nodded in agreement. I too have felt someone behind me while walking at night. The more I thought about it, the more frightened I became. You simply need to clear your mind. Is that truly the case? The girl expressed skepticism. As they searched, they traversed from the first-floor hall to the 6th, yet encountered no fortune. How peculiar. Lin Dong's brow furrowed. Could it be that we truly are haunted? Xiao Lu pondered aloud. I suspect the monster must have departed. After raiding so many supplies and killing 5 of us, why would it linger? Indeed, that would pose a problem, Lin Dong replied, furrowing his brow as he gazed over the railing from the 6th floor, taking in the expansive view of the first-floor hall and the various levels. Numerous survivors wandered with their flashlights, and so far, there had been no casualties. Perhaps it truly has left. The female awakened one side, her taut nerves finally easing. We've been searching for half an hour, and I've been holding in my bladder. I didn't dare to relieve myself earlier. I'll make a quick trip to the restroom. Go ahead, Lin nodded, though a sense of unease crept in. Chun-Li, accompany Xiao Jing. It's better for two to look out for one another. All right then. Chun-Li shrugged her shoulders, a hint of helplessness etched on her face. Was it really necessary? Even going to the restroom required supervision. The two of them veered off, deciding against visiting the bathroom. After all, it was the end of the world. And finding a secluded spot to relieve themselves seemed more practical. The deserted corridor was shrouded in darkness. However, the awakened ones possessed vision that surpassed ordinary limits, enabling them to see with some clarity. Hurry up, Chun-Li urged, turning away, as no one wished to witness another's bathroom affairs. Xiao Jing replied, approaching the wall's edge. Just as she unfastened her pants and was about to squat down, an inexplicable sense of unease surged within her. It was the instinct of the awakened, warning her of imminent peril. Filth! A whisper echoed from the shadows. Subsequently, a young figure gradually materialized, his pallid complexion and frigid gaze radiating a tinge of disdain, as if rebuking her for her indiscretion. Panic surged in Xiao Jing's heart. She raised her hand, ready to unleash her powers. Yet, a dagger had already pierced her temple. Chapter 28. Loud conspiracy. The woman's eyes widened in horror, still reflecting the terror of her last moments, her pupils dilating slowly as her lifeless body crumpled to the ground. Xiao Jing. In the darkness, Chun-Li swiftly turned her head, just in time to witness a shadowy figure plunge a knife into the girl's skull. A wave of shock washed over her, her eyes nearly bursting with fear. The monster had appeared. An icy aura enveloped Chun-Li. Her awakened ability was of the frost element. With a swift clasp of her hands, ice crystals formed, and two sharp ice spikes extended outward. In an instant, she launched herself toward Lin Dong. Her speed akin to that of a leaping cheetah. The ice spikes sliced through the air, producing a series of sonic booms, their lethality surpassing that of bullets. Lin Dong sought to evade the attack, retreating and melding into the wall. Chun-Li found herself momentarily disoriented, searching for her target. But just as uncertainty clouded her mind, a dagger emerged from the wall, aimed directly at her crown. The speed of the blade was astonishing. Chun-Li barely had time to react. By the time she attempted to dodge, the blade had already embedded itself in her skull, extracting her crystal core. Another lifeless body fell to the ground. All of this transpired in the blink of an eye. Xiao Jing, Chun-Li, what happened to you two? At this moment, anxious voices echoed from the corridor's entrance. It was Lin Nan and the others, who had hurried over upon sensing something amiss, only to arrive too late. Before them lay two corpses, each devoid of wounds, yet their cores had been removed. The manner of death mirrored that of the previous five. A profound sense of eeriness permeated the hearts of those present. Two more lives extinguished. Where had the monster gone? The remaining five individuals cast their anxious glances around, their expressions laden with gravity, fearful of falling victim to an ambush themselves. Yet, the surroundings had returned to an eerie silence, as if nothing had transpired. Had it not been for the two lifeless bodies at their feet, they might have believed they were ensnared in an illusion. It was all too bizarre. This unsettling realization dawned upon them. The creature had not departed, but rather lurked in the shadows. The moment anyone let their guard down, they would be met with a fatal blow. Lin Nan pondered a troubling thought. Among the 200 survivors in the mall, not a single one had perished thus far, indicating that the monster's target was solely the awakened. Perhaps, Xiao Jing's intuition was accurate. The creature had been trailing them all along. At that moment, Xiao Lu's eyes were bloodshot, his breaths labored, as the immense pressure weighing upon him threatened to drive him to madness. Where are you, monster? Show yourself. What skill is it to employ underhanded tactics? Have the courage to confront me one-on-one. Yet, despite his fervent cries, the corridor echoed back only silence, shrouded in darkness and death, offering no reply. Xiao Lu, calm down, Lin Nan urged in a low voice. Your outburst serves no purpose. Rather, it would be wiser to analyze how the creature executes its killings. Brother Nan, did you discover something just now? Inquired a female awakened, the sole woman among the five. Lina nodded. Indeed, I have made some observations. Oh, the other's eyes sparkled with curiosity as they leaned in, eager for further insight. Lin Nan focused intently and remarked, do you not find it peculiar that Chun-Li died facing the wall? This implies that she was poised to strike at the wall before her demise. Strike the wall? The others exchanged bewildered glances, only to soon entertain a strange hypothesis. Could the creature be within the wall? No, Lin Nan clarified, it does not reside within the wall, but possesses the ability to traverse through objects, including the flesh of humans. The four considered this reasoning plausible. Otherwise, there would be no corpses devoid of wounds, with their brains extracted. In truth, they had contemplated this notion earlier, yet found it hard to accept. Could such an ability truly exist? Indeed, and it can swiftly relocate vast quantities of resources. The combination of these factors suggests it belongs to the realm of spatial abilities, possibly even having awakened a domain. What? A domain? The four were once again astonished. The tech corporation had researched apocalyptic scenarios, capturing numerous zombies and mutated beasts for sampling and experimentation. They discovered that a rare few among them could awaken bizarre capabilities, including domains. A creature possessing a domain could manifest unpredictably, executing killings invisibly. Some researchers designated such zombies as phantom corpses. Are we encountering a phantom corpse? Xiao Lu's eyes widened in horror. Yes. And it is evident that this zombie possesses a high degree of intelligence, excelling in concealment and evasion. Such a zombie wields tremendous lethality. It must be eradicated before it evolves into a corpse king, lest it become an insurmountable threat. Lin Dong declared, his gaze resolute. The remaining individuals gasped in terror, overwhelmed by the sheer horror of the situation. Xiao Lu appeared to recall something and spoke reassuringly. There's no need to be afraid. Research has indicated that zombies inhabiting a particular domain generally possess weakened physical forms, which constitutes their critical vulnerability. Oh, that makes sense. No wonder it dares not confront us openly, preferring instead to launch ambushes from the shadows. The group felt somewhat alleviated. Xiao Lu nodded in agreement. The most pressing issue now is how to locate it. Indeed, given their current capabilities, if the zombie chose to remain hidden, they might never uncover its whereabouts. Lin Dong began to analyze the situation but quickly pivoted. However, perhaps we can devise a strategy. Even if that zombie possesses a high level of intelligence, it surely cannot surpass that of humans. Humanity has thrived on Earth for millennia, relying on its intellect. For instance, if one cannot catch a wild rabbit through hunting, one might design a trap to ensnare it. Following this, after much deliberation among the five, they concocted a plan to lure the enemy. They decided to send one person as bait, feigning separation to coax the zombie out, after which the group would attack in mass. However, this role carried considerable risk, necessitating the selection of a strong individual. Lin Dong stepped forward with resolve. I will take on the role of bait. I will head to the lobby on the first floor. You all should remain on the 6th floor, where visibility is optimal. Once the target is spotted, attack immediately. Remember, the zombie's physical form is frail. We must engage in close combat to prevent it from escaping. Nan, it's too dangerous for you to act as bait alone. Let me accompany you. The zombie is likely to engage if it sees two of us. A tall, robust man expressed his concern. Lin Dong nodded in acknowledgement. All right then. Li Tao and I will serve as bait. Xiao Lu, you and the others must keep watch from above. The three of you must not disperse. Understood, Nan. You can count on me. Xiao Lu affirmed, thumping his chest. Having previously been led by the nose by the monster, resulting in the loss of 7 comrades, he felt a burgeoning sense of determination as the counteroffensive was finally underway. With their spirits high, they commenced their plan. Unbeknownst to them, Lin Dong was merely a few dozen meters away, eavesdropping on their every word, his keen zombie senses allowing him to absorb the details of Lin Dong's strategy. Chapter 29, The Bait. Currently, 5 awakeners remained, 3 of whom had solidified their cores and possessed considerable strength, while the other 2 were still in the early stages of development, merely exhibiting superior physical capabilities compared to ordinary individuals. Confronting them directly posed no challenge for Lin Dong. At that moment, Lin Dong and the tall man had reached the lobby on the first floor. The group of survivors rushed forward upon seeing the two. Captain Li, we have scoured the entire mall and found no trace of the monster. Certainly, you cannot find it. That thing is quite enigmatic. Lin Dong observed the survivors with a hint of irritation, pondering why the creature did not attack ordinary people, but focused solely on those of them who had awakened. Why were they unscathed? Everyone scratched their heads in confusion. Captain Li, what shall we do? Do not worry. We shall resolve this matter swiftly. Lin Dong replied with notable confidence. On the 6th floor of the mall, Xiao Lu stood with 2 companions, 1 male and 1 female, at the railing, intently watching, eager not to miss any subtle cues. Stay alert. If Brother Nan is attacked, we will descend to provide support immediately. Understood. The 2 nodded seriously. Unbeknownst to them, Lin Dong had emerged from the corridor, heading directly towards them. However, the female awakened had a keen intuition and suddenly felt a sense of unease, as if something lurked behind her. Who is it? She swiftly turned to look. What she saw momentarily stunned her. A tall youth, impeccably dressed and strikingly handsome, approached her slowly. Such a visage easily garnered the affection of young women. You startled me. I thought there was a monster. The girl exhaled deeply, patting her ample chest. Monster? What monster? Lin Dong disagreed with the notion. Xiao Lu and the other male instinctively viewed Lin Dong as a survivor. You are doing quite well to have reached the 6th floor. Since we have some time to spare, Lin Dong smiled slightly, stepping forward to lean on the railing alongside the 3, gazing down into the hall below. Due to their proximity, the female awakened caught a faint scent of laundry detergent. She turned her head and beheld Lin Dong's handsome profile, sharply defined and flawless. A flutter stirred within her heart. Were it not for the perilous circumstances, she might have insisted he share her bed. In this apocalyptic world, female awakened individuals were equally sought after. Polyandry was not an issue. There truly are monsters in the mall. You should accompany us. There may be danger on the first floor, the girl stated. What danger could possibly exist on the first floor? Lin Dong casually inquired. Xiao Lu, with a fiery temper, felt a surge of irritation. You wouldn't understand even if I told you. Stop asking irrelevant questions and let us focus on the task at hand. Why do you not perceive the danger of the sixth floor? Lin Dong remarked with a hint of amusement. I say. Xiao Lu opened his mouth to scold him, but reconsidered. Something felt amiss. Lin Dong's tone did not resemble that of a mere survivor, especially the girl. Recalling how Lin Dong had approached silently, effortlessly navigating through the darkness, while ordinary survivors would require a flashlight or phone for illumination, unable to see anything at all. Yet here he was, unencumbered, able to lean over the sixth-floor railing and gaze directly into the hall below. Upon this realization, the girl felt her body stiffen, a chill surging through her scalp, and every hair on her body stood on end. What, indeed, was the entity lurking beside her? Xiao Lu reacted swiftly, dashing towards Lin Dong with determination. Quick, it's him. Take action. Yet Lin Dong retreated with an ethereal grace, evading the assault effortlessly. Xiao Lu, recalling the teachings of the researchers, understood that the zombies in this domain possessed relatively frail physiques, and fortuitously, he was an awakened being endowed with enhanced strength. Trying to escape? You shall perish. Without hesitation, Xiao Lu surged forward, unleashing a punch, for the time for vengeance had come after the loss of so many comrades. His arm bulged with muscle, nearly straining against the confines of his uniform. This punch was immensely powerful, fueled by every ounce of his strength. Lin Dong, contemplating a test of his own prowess, remembered his last encounter with Zhang Xiaoyuan, where a single punch had been sufficient to end the confrontation. Thus, this time, he exerted only 50% of his strength, raising his hand to deliver a counterstrike. The impact was thunderous. As their fists collided, it was akin to hammers clashing. A wave of force radiating outward, causing the railing on the sixth floor to tremble violently. With a resounding crack, Xiao Lu felt excruciating pain as his arm shattered, contorting grotesquely and hanging limply. How formidable! Xiao Lu, racked with agony, pressed his hand against his wounded arm, stumbling back a few steps. Beads of cold sweat trickling down his forehead. At that moment, he realized that this adversary was far stronger than the researchers had suggested. That punch could have obliterated a tank. A wave of despair surged within him. Damn it! Which researcher concocted this so-called achievement? If there is a next life, I will surely confront him. This was Xiao Lu's final thought as he teetered on the brink of death. Beside him, two teammates, still at the brain enhancement stage and lacking awakened abilities, were collectively weaker than Xiao Lu. In a fleeting moment, Lin Dong darted forward, piercing the necks of both individuals. Meanwhile, in the lobby on the first floor, Linan was engaged in conversation with the survivors when a muffled thud resonated from the sixth floor, followed by the tremors of the railing. Something was amiss. Linan furrowed his brow and quickly looked up. Scanning the area, he found no trace of Xiao Lu and the others. This is bad. The tall man accompanying him suddenly had a realization. It must be that Xiao Lu and his team were under attack. We need to ascend immediately to assist. Wait, Linan called out, struck by another thought. He might have severely underestimated the enemy's strength. After all, Xiao Lu was one of the strongest in their group, second only to Linan himself. With the other two awakened beings alongside him, were they not formidable enough to contend with mere monsters? Moreover, even if they were outmatched, they should have been able to hold their ground for at least a moment. Yet, it had taken mere instants for Xiao Lu and his companions to vanish. The tall man remained impatient. Nangu, what are we waiting for? Shouldn't we help Lu go? It is too late. Linan's pupils constricted sharply. An overwhelming sense of crisis engulfing his heart, as if he were being targeted by something sinister, with death lurking at every turn. At that moment, the survivors exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of what had transpired. The oppressive darkness surrounding them rendered everything invisible. Suddenly, a burly man felt a chill creep up his neck, as droplets of something fell upon him. What is this? Instinctively, he reached back to touch the source, only to find it sticky and reeking with a faintly pungent scent. Quickly, he illuminated the area with his flashlight, but upon seeing his bloodied palm, his face turned ashen. Blood. This is blood. Chapter 30. Dinner is served. The group jumped at the sound of a shriek, turning to discover that not only the burly man, but also the ground beneath him, had formed a pool of fresh blood, cascading down from the sixth floor. Terror gripped their hearts as they hurriedly directed their flashlights upward. In the dim light, They discerned a shadowy figure by the railing, but it vanished in an instant, leaving them in disbelief. There is a ghost. I saw it. It was just there, and then disappeared into thin air. But where did it go? As fear and panic surged, they scoured the area with their flashlights. Yet the shadow eluded them. Lin Nan's expression hardened, and he managed to squeeze out a few words through clenched teeth. It has come down. What? The others became increasingly frantic, their nerves strung tight. Lin Nan understood that the intense unease he had felt stemmed from being watched by that entity. As an awakened individual with heightened mental acuity, he sensed the danger drawing nearer. This time, the monster's target was himself. Lin Dong utilized his abilities within the realm of corpses, descending directly from the 6th floor to the 1st, revealing himself without concealment. As he appeared, chaos erupted among the people, who recoiled as if from a venomous snake, scattering in every direction, some stumbling and falling in their haste. Yet, this did not deter Lin Dong. He was determined to evade as far as possible. In an instant, a vacuum of space surrounded Lin Dong. A clear warning to keep away. The crowd stared at his face with a mixture of fear and astonishment. They were taken aback by how strikingly handsome and impeccably clean he appeared, so unlike the monstrous, bloodthirsty villain they had envisioned. However, Lin Nan and the burly man did not flee. They felt as though they were being targeted by a ferocious beast, paralyzed by fear, unable to make even the slightest movement. It was akin to walking down a forest path only to encounter a great tiger. Turning to run would surely invite a deadly attack. The only prudent course would be to kneel and submit, for a tiger does not prey upon its own cubs. Of course, Lin Dong was no tiger. At that moment, both men found themselves devoid of any solid plan. "Brother Nan, shall we confront him?" suggested the tall man. Lin Nan shook his head. His brazen appearance indicated his absolute confidence. "We were no match for him. If the opportunity arises, I will hold him off. And you should flee." The tall man nodded. Subsequently, Lin Nan closed his eyes, focusing his mind to unleash a psychic attack. The air around him seemed to solidify, and his mental force transformed into countless steel needles, surging forward like a tidal wave. This ability was immensely powerful. If an ordinary person were to be attacked, they might experience a momentary daze or faint. In severe cases, they could end up with cerebral palsy or become comatose. Indeed, there was some merit to this. Lin Dong recognized that this method posed a genuine threat to him. Thus, as his eyes glimmered with a crimson light, he unleashed his domain. The formidable realm of the Corpse King expanded outward, immediately blocking the mental assault. Lin Nan's mental intent was thwarted. He felt a piercing pain as if his brain were being pricked, his vision darkening as he nearly succumbed to unconsciousness. Yet, he bit his tongue, forcing his consciousness to rise. "Quick, go. I can barely hold on." "Huh." The tall man hesitated, for to him, the path ahead was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Once caught within, survival was uncertain. Lin Nan pressed on. "My mental force can still endure for now. Later, there may be no chance at all." "All right." The tall man's gaze solidified with determination. Even if it was a mountain of corpses, he had to brave it. He bent his body like an arrow released from a bow, charging towards Lin Dong, while his muscles bulged and his skin hardened like rock. This was his awakened ability, resilient skin. However, once he entered the corpse domain, his speed abruptly slowed, as if mired in a quagmire. Nevertheless, he gritted his teeth and, relying on his formidable physique, hurled a punch towards Lin Dong. Lin Dong stepped back to evade, his fingers reaching for the man's head. "This is bad." The man's brow furrowed as he recalled Lin Nan mentioning that this fellow could phase through bodies to attack directly from within. In other words, he must not be touched. He quickly sidestepped to avoid. Within the corpse domain, he was already under immense pressure, as if battling while carrying a small mountain. The man barely managed to dodge, stumbling slightly but regaining his footing. That was too close. Just a brief encounter, and he nearly met his demise. The thrill of dancing on the edge of death sent adrenaline surging through him. Yet at that moment, the man felt his body sink again, the oppressive force of the corpse domain intensifying, rendering his body rigid and incapable of effective attack. "What is happening?" He swiftly turned to look behind him, astonished to find that Lin Nan had vanished. This fellow had not launched a mental attack, but had instead turned to flee towards the entrance of the mall. Clearly, he was escaping. "Your leader has abandoned you," Lin Dong's calm voice echoed in his ears. The man stood in stunned silence, utterly unprepared for the unfolding events. Just moments ago, Lin Nan had proclaimed his intent to stall the adversary, allowing himself a chance to escape. Yet, he had deceived himself, stepping forward to confront the pressure while abandoning his own chance to flee. The depths of a person's heart are often obscured. It is challenging to discern one's true nature until calamity strikes. Typically, Lin Nan exhibited great care for everyone, earning their trust, yet when the moment of truth arrived, he betrayed his comrades. Perhaps from the very beginning, He had meticulously orchestrated this outcome, never intending to join them. Moreover, Lin did not escape alone. A throng of survivors followed closely behind. They had discerned that remaining was tantamount to certain death. With Captain Li fleeing, they had no choice but to follow suit. To hell with morality and virtue. In this apocalyptic world, what good are brotherly bonds? Survival is the only truth that matters. Lin's face contorted with rage as he muttered to himself, resigning to the thought that he would not return to Tai Corporation. After all, he was an awakened one. He could endure in this desolation. With remarkable speed, he reached the entrance of the mall, which had long been barricaded with steel plates and bound with numerous chains. Frantically, he began to unfasten the chains. "Captain Li, wait for us." A multitude of survivors called as they hastened toward him. Even if they managed to escape, survival apart from Lin was impossible, so they resolved to stick with him. United in purpose, they pushed against the heavy steel plate. With a thunderous crash, the plate toppled, stirring a cloud of dust. The mall's entrance swung open. Outside, the night breeze swept in, carrying a refreshing chill that invigorated their spirits. Dawn was approaching, with a faint light illuminating the horizon. Yet, as the door opened, instead of joyfully fleeing, the people stood frozen in place, their expressions etched with horror. For outside the mall lay thousands of zombies, densely packed, blocking their escape route. At the forefront stood Tank, Xiao Ba, and the doctor, exuding an overwhelming presence. Strangely, this horde of zombies remained eerily silent, like wooden stakes, awaiting the command of their king. In the suffocating silence, a deep voice resonated from behind the crowd. "Dinner is served."